نوروزتان بهروز و بهاران خجسته باد. Wishing you all a joyous and inspiring Nowruz and spring. I am Mohammed Tawakkoli, the inaugural director of the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies at the University of Toronto. I thank you all for joining us in today's celebration of Nowruz, organized by the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies in partnership with the office of our exceptional and inspirational MP Ali Ehsasi. I would also like to thank all of our excellent musicians and special speakers for making this a memorable Nowruz celebration. Inaugurating the spring season, Nowruz 2024 started at the vernal equinox on Tuesday, March 19th, and ends on the 13th day on Monday, April 1st, with outdoor picnicking in grassy meadows and parks. As a celebration of spring, Nowruz embodies the universal message of natural renewal, rejuvenation, and promise of lighter, brighter, and warmer days ahead, with the natural certainty of sprouting, blooming, and budding trees, vegetations, flowers, and, of course, singing birds, and the saint of spring. Nowruz has been celebrated for several millennia in Iran and the world beyond. This includes the North American indigenous nations who for long celebrated the spring equinox and the beginning of spring. This celebration of spring thus provides us with a natural occasion for fostering deeper cultural, social, and personal collaboration with the indigenous nations and communities in Canada. This is particularly important since celebrating natural beauty and floral diversity has long served as a symbol of religious, cultural, ethnic, and linguistic diversity within the larger global Iranian community. We salute the indigenous people of Canada and acknowledge their ancestral land on which we are gathering today. Nowruz is also an occasion to renew friendship through reciprocal visit and gift giving. We are deeply grateful for your presence and generous gifts that you have contributed to the Iranian Studies Student Scholarship Fund at the University of Toronto. Your support is invaluable and will make a significant difference in the lives of our students. All the ticket sales for today's event further bolsters this fund, demonstrating the transformative power of your generosity. Now, I invite to the podium our inspirational co-host, MP Ali Ehsasi, who has made today's gathering of our inspirational speakers possible. MP Ali Ehsasi. MP Ali.
Hello, everyone. Happy Nowruz. It is so incredible to see you all. Now, over the course of the past 10 days, I've had the good fortune to see many of you, but of course, at times like this, which are so important to us, it's always good to see you over and over again. So allow me to start off by thanking Professor Tawakkoli of the University of Toronto. What we decided to do is to come together and to pull together a special event for all of you today. And the reason why I think it's special is, as I often say to people, no matter where I go in this vast country of ours, I always see incredibly inspiring individuals who are at the forefront of all the amazing things that happen in this country. And truth be told, for some of us, it might stretch back a whole lot more, for others less so. But in the early days, there were only a few sectors where we would see shining brights from our community doing exceptional work. But the reality is, with the passage of time, I don't care what sector of the economy you look at, you see so many impressive, resonant, and uplifting Iranian Canadians who are doing superb work. Quite often, they are at the forefront of various aspects of the cultural life of Canada, the technical life of Canada, and the economic life of Canada. So with Dr. Tawakkoli, we just thought we would do it somewhat differently this time and afford all of us the opportunity to be inspired by remarkable and exceptional individuals who are doing incredible work around our country. And let me tell you, when we did reach out, and it's always difficult to do so, but when we did reach out to these individuals, they were gracious and they all agreed to be here with us today. So we're eternally grateful to them. So that's why, as you have likely noted, this program is called بازدید نوروزی as well as سپاس, because we really should have gratitude for all these people to inspire us day in and day out. Now, as Professor Tawakkoli did announce, we also have a special guest with us here today. And the reality is, this special guest is incredibly busy. She has a very demanding job, and I'm sure you've seen her essentially zigzagging across the country. And this week is a very, very important week for her, as is next week, for reasons that will become obvious to you. However, she was so incredibly gracious. She called me and she said, wow, this is extraordinary what you and the University of Toronto are doing. So I would love to drop by and to say how incredibly I am impressed with Iranian Canadians who are contributing to every facet of the life of Canada. So some of you might know by now who I am referring to. I am referring to the Honorable Chrystia Freeland. She is truly one of the most hardworking individuals you will ever see in public life. And that's because not only is she our Deputy Prime Minister, she's also the Minister of Finance. So, as you know, the budget is coming out next week, but she was gracious enough to insist that she wanted to be with us here today as well. So I'd be grateful if you gave a very, very warm welcome to Minister Chrystia Freeland. Thank you.
Ali's a little bit taller than I am. Well, look, thank you very, very much, Ali, for the invitation. And I think, like everyone here, I have learned that Ali is such an excellent MP. He is such a tireless representative that resistance is futile. So I think what we all have in common is we've understood when Ali asks us to do something, first of all, it's a good idea, but second of all, you're just going to end up having to do it. So thank you so much for that. It's that kind of energy, that kind of determination, that kind of commitment that it takes to make an event like this happen. So I'm really grateful. And I just want to say to everyone, good afternoon, happy Nowruz. I am delighted to be here. It's a real privilege. It's a privilege to be here with you. It's a privilege to be here with Ali Sassi. He is a fantastic MP. He is a great MP for Willowdale, and he is a great Iranian Canadian. It's really important that he is in our House of Commons. He is such an important partner and friend and advisor to me, an advocate for his community. And I am grateful to see you all here because part of what I recognize is all of you recognize how important his work is. And so I want to thank you in part for supporting him. Ça me fait un tellement grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. La communauté iranienne-canadienne est une communauté extraordinaire, comme vous savez très, très bien. Les contributions de la communauté iranienne-canadienne dans dans toutes les professions, dans l'économie canadienne, dans les universités canadiennes, dans les hôpitaux canadiens, vous êtes les créateurs canadiens. Vraiment, vous êtes une communauté extraordinaire, une communauté merveilleuse, et ça me fait un grand plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. You guys are an amazing community. Canada's Iranian-Canadian community, extraordinarily accomplished in spheres ranging from academia to business to medicine to the arts. Extraordinary Iranian Canadians in every area of public endeavor. And I just want to thank you for the contributions that you make to the amazing country, Canada, that we all share. So thank you very much. Merci à vous. This today is an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of your whole community, and to do that by celebrating the achievements of some remarkable individuals. And look, this is a room full of stars. In this room, in this auditorium, we have leaders from academia, medicine, engineering, finance, technology, business, artists, performers. I'm especially glad to be here today because this event is being held to benefit students of Iranian studies at the University of Toronto. What a wonderful thing for Canada to support, for the U of T to support, and for the Iranian Canadian community to support. Thank you so much for doing that. That intellectual work is going to help us all and will help Canadians have a deeper understanding of Iran, which is so, so valuable. And by the way, I have an extra reason to be thanking you for that aspect of your work today. And I think Ali knew this when he invited me here. I know he did. I'm the MP for University Rosedale. So this is yet another contribution you're making to the University of Toronto in my riding, which I represent. So thank you so much. I really just want to conclude by saying, this event is about recognizing some remarkable individuals, some remarkable Iranian Canadians. It's about supporting something which is really important, Iranian studies at the U of T. But when I look out at this hall, what moves me the most and what impresses me the most is, yes, lots of individually remarkable people, and each person who is here, each person who's going to be recognized shines so brightly as a star in their field. What is even more extraordinary is your commitment to giving back and to working together as a community. I admire that so much. I admire the community spirit so much. I admire the community work so much. And I want you to know that that commitment, yes, to being extraordinary in your field, but then to using those accomplishments to work together and to lift up the whole community and the whole country, to me, that is at the heart of what it means to be Canadian. And it is that impulse, that approach, that work, which is why I believe, as I'm sure everyone here does, that Canada is the greatest country in the world. And you are such an important community that is building it. Alors, bonne nouvelle année, Happy New Year, and my best wishes for a wonderful celebration and a happy Sid Zebidar. Thank you so much for letting me be here with you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. The world we live in today is not a happy place. Wherever we look, we find war, conflict, injustice, and violence on an unprecedented scale. It's an unbelievable irony how far we have come in the history of human consciousness and how little we have learned from our personal and collective follies. Today, we are gathered here to celebrate Nowruz, marking the Persian New Year that takes place at the time of spring equinox, a specific moment in the Iranian solar calendar when the sun crosses the celestial equator and balances the duration of the day with the duration of the night. The symbolism of this yearly celestial event couldn't be more obvious for our deeply troubled times. As we launch our Nowruz celebrations today, and welcome another year, let us not forget all those people who are going through an unending night of suffering, displacement, exile, and loss in different parts of the world. Today's performance is dedicated to all of you out there with the hope that our music and this remarkable piece of Persian poetry from 14th century Shiraz will help you see the rising sun in the not-so-distant horizon. I wish you a Nowruz filled with peace, compassion, and renewal. Nowruz Mubarak. I hope you enjoyed the performance.
Thank you, Aqsa, Charlie, Pablo, Murtaza, and Nagme for your exceptional performance and message of peace. Our first panel, Physicians of Distinction, features Dr. Tina Meysami, Dr. Gulare Zadeh, Dr. Andrew Bouzari, and Dr. Keyvan Karkuti, who will be moderating today's panel of distinctive physicians. Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is afternoon, so thank you. It's very tough to follow that act, so that was a wonderful musical performance. And I'm supposed to be moderating this session that was supposed to have 3 physicians of distinction. Unfortunately, Dr. Gulare Zadeh isn't able to make it. She had to work today. She texted me that she can't make it, emergency surgery. I said, well, come on, you can make it anyway. It's not brain surgery after all. And in fact, it was brain surgery, so that didn't sit well too well. So she's one of our most accomplished brain surgeons. So I'm going to get more involved than I thought I would be. I thought I would just direct questions and try to come up with a conversation amongst these 3 really distinguished physicians. So I'm going to get more involved than I thought I would be. My apologies, this is not going to be in Farsi. I have no problem. But Dr. Bouzari here doesn't. His Farsi is not the best, so we're just going to do this in English. Just joking, though. I've been here since 1978, so my English my Farsi is at a grade 6 level. So we're going to do this in English. So with that, I'm just going to say a couple of words about myself, and then ask our panel to introduce themselves. You have the bio in the program. So as I said, I've been here since 78. All my education has been in Toronto. I'm a clinician scientist at Toronto General Research Institute. Now, whenever I say I'm a clinician scientist, my daughter laughs out loud. She says, "You're no scientist, Daddy, you're just a clinician." So that is true. I mean, that's what I take the most pride in, that I am a clinician. I've been at UHN Toronto General since 1996. I'm the head of the Department of Anesthesia and Pain Management. And I've been a cardiac anesthetist for the past, 25 years. So with that, I'm just going to pass it on to Dr. Meysami and then Dr. Bouzari.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here today. Keyvan, thank you. And thank you to Professor, Ali Assasi, that's right, for inviting us here today. As Keyvan mentioned, my name is Tina Meysami. I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon. And I moved to Canada in 1984 at the age of 13, when I almost exactly 40 years ago on March 14th, 1984. And the very next day after arriving, I attended junior high to finish grade 8. I completed my high school at Northview High School, secondary high school, which is not too far from here. I attended University of Toronto for undergraduate and dentistry, and I went on to specialize in oral maxillofacial surgery, and then I completed a fellowship in facial trauma surgery in Johannesburg, South Africa. Upon my return to Toronto, I was hired at Toronto General Hospital, but due to many circumstances, that program shut down, and I went on to private practice at Etobicoke General Hospital. There, I was hired to take care of facial trauma patients, and I served in that position for 15 years. From the beginning of my career in 2001, 2002, I have been teaching at Faculty of Dentistry in the areas of anesthesia, outpatient sedation, and maxillofacial surgery. I'm currently an assistant professor at Faculty of Dentistry at University of Toronto. I have been practicing in Yorkville for the past 20 years. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary. And I'm the director of dental sleep medicine at Toronto Rehab Institute at University Health Network, and a staff surgeon at Northview General Hospital.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh. Well, when the lights came off, it was really nice. Actually, could see everyone, but we'll let the stage management happen. And I just wanted to re-echo the thanks to Ali, to Professor Ali, for this invitation. It's been an amazing panel to be a part of. I know Dr. Zadeh couldn't join us today, but she texted and sent her regrets from the operating room, and Dr. Karkouti has promised a lot of dad jokes today, which have already done very well in the crowd and roasting. So looking forward to that moderation, and obviously have been such a fan and admirer and fortunate to be a colleague of Dr. Maysami at UHN. So I don't think it was a political decision by Ali, but I think almost all of us are at University Health Network or have some affiliation with UHN. My name is Andrew Bazari. I'm a primary care physician. I did my training at the University of Toronto, but then also did my health policy training in the US. I was working in the US for about 5 years before being recruited back to University Health Network in the first role of its kind in the country as Executive Director of Social Medicine and Population Health. And it's something that I've been fortunate to be able to do pre-pandemic, but definitely through COVID, as many of the questions of fairness and social justice definitely were illuminated about who got sick and who died. And really, I think the good fortune in that sense of being able to lift this work collectively and be more attached to community. And really, I don't think my parents are able to make it out today, but in the bio, I was born here, and everything that I've done of any importance is credit to them. Any shortcoming in full disclosure is of my own accord, but being able to work at this intersection of health and law, like my parents, has been something continue to see unfold in ways I would not have imagined in Toronto and in North America. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to make this interactive, but we really can't see any of you, so if you have any questions or anything, raising your hand is going to be useless. So what I would suggest is maybe I have my cell phone here, or we could take a verbal. So if you want to text me, I mean, my cell phone number is 416-804-3372. I will look at my text. But if you want to write something down, I'm sure somebody would be happy to bring it over to us. So if there's anything specific you want us to talk about, by all means, please bring it forward. One thing I was going to ask, starting off the bat, you did not mention the work you do with Dr. Borna Maysami Fard Foundation in your introduction, and you did allude to your work, that excellent social sciences work and the differences you're making to the city of Toronto beyond UHN. So I'm just wondering whether you could both comment on those, because to be honest with you, you've done amazing work that I'm truly impressed by, so please.
Sure, I'm always delighted to talk about the work of the foundation. The foundation is named after my late brother, Dr. Borna Maysami. It's a commemorative foundation to commemorate what a great human being and an amazing clinician he was. Borna was an orthopedic surgeon, and so upon his loss, there was an intention to honor him for as long as I could. In the realm of medicine, dentistry, and because he was really my best friend and my backbone and my biggest mentor, I wanted to pay forward what he had provided for me for 37 years. And so as a woman and as a clinician, the first thing I thought of was to provide a pro bono dental treatment and oral surgical treatment to women in need. We chose survivors of gender-based violence because at the time with the intimate group we were working, we thought these are the women that generally don't qualify for many services, and dentistry is not socially covered by our social medicine in Canada, or it wasn't until very, very recently. And so it seemed like a great opportunity. A great group to help out. The foundation started 15 years ago. We started with 2 or 3 women's shelters that we're already referring to the 5 clinicians amongst our group, the founding members. And from time to time, the phone would ring and the shelter would say, we have a woman here in need with a dental abscess, severe pain, facial swelling, you name it, or facial trauma. could you see the patient pro bono? And so we started with those shelters. And in the past 15 years, we've built it up to over 65 shelters in Ontario, and we work with 37 sexual assault and domestic violence centers.
Yeah, and one of the things, perfect, thank you so much. Good to see everyone. No, I think one of the things that is also, I think, to say was such a draw to be able to be here is, and be part of the Iranian community, is the brilliant women leadership. And I think you see it in all of the panels, and we see it with Dr. Misami and Dr. Zadeh, Dr. Cody, who's coming up, and everyone in the room. So to be able to work alongside and learn from so many brilliant women leaders in the Iranian community is something that has driven and shaped a lot of my work. And again, I will go back to this sense you mentioned around social justice or social fairness. I do think it is in our blood as Iranians and as Persians, if you are in medicine, in this aspect that people cannot attain good health unless you address the politics and good policy. And so that all of our work without good progressive policy as clinicians, whether it's in the operating room or it's out in community, will fall flat. And that has really been the thrust of my work. So it is also not lost on me that my parents at Montreal, and I was born in St. Jamestown, and I work clinically about 3 or 4 blocks away. All of my clinical practice is in shelter spaces and for people who are unhoused in Regent Park. And then at the time working an executive director at University Health Network. And so I walked from my office at UHN about 20 minutes to where it is in Regent Park, and the average life expectancy drops 20 to 30 years. And so that is the walk that we have in our own city, in our own country. And we talk about postal codes being much better predictor than our genetic codes about how long people will live. And so really, again, we talk about policy, these decisions that are not the fault of people on their own. If they're denied housing, people lose 20 to 30 to 40 birthdays. And I think for young people in the crowd to think that that's what you're going to lose for no fault of your own really is the driver of the work. And as, of course, I was so thankful for the lights to come on. Someone's dimming them. So we'll continue to try to look into the abyss. This is keeping us on our toes. And so my work clinically, again, is really working with people who are unhoused in primary care, mental health, and addictions. And we've been able, for the first time in the country, with both the support of the federal government, provincial and municipal government, to build housing on public hospital land for the first time for people who are at highest need of healthcare. And so in July of 2024, we'll have a 4-story, 51-unit building for people who are high utilizers of the UHN emergency departments. And to put that into context, so for 51 people, when we looked at the data, and this is my work as a researcher at the University of Toronto and at Columbia, 51 people made up 3,000 emergency department visits just in the last 6 months. And that's not because they needed to be there, they had nowhere else to go. And so this is part of the thinking around upstream building. Can we address these issues before they end up in our care in the emergency department, and the kind of supports they need in place. So again, I'll make no comment on the lighting right now as it's dimming up, dimming down, but really I think it's supposed to have some line to complete. But that is where the work is, and part of it, as Dr. Misami is pointing around shelter and shelter violence, my role during COVID was the co-lead for all of the vaccine response among shelters and for people who are unhoused. And so currently we have 10,000 people who are unhoused in Toronto. We continue to do this work for people who, again, cannot afford medications, who cannot afford basic needs. And again, I think, unfortunately, we're also seeing many coming from refugee newcomer communities, many from Iran, many from Afghanistan, many from the Middle East. And I think really when we look at the service that's needed to change, part of it is what we do in medicine, but a lot of it is what we do around social policy. And this has really been the connect around social medicine.
Thank you. I don't see any hands up. I didn't get any text. One of the things that's always grounded me, I think, is I've had a lot of privileges that I acknowledge, a lot of luck in my life. And one of the things that's always grounded me is I've recognized the junctures in my life where a little bit of a bad luck or a wrong decision would have put me in that exact same situation of the people that you're trying to help, both of you. Raising two daughters, I can see where their lives could have deviated, and how lucky we are to be where we are, and how easy it is for our trajectory of our life to be completely different. So thank you both for what you do. I really, it's truly impressive. Yes. I think we do have a microphone.
Specifically for the unhoused population? Yes, I'll try to repeat the question. I think it was around, do we see a growing need, or is there more and more needs? So I would say, from a social epidemiology perspective, absolutely. So we've looked at this data. We've seen a 30 to 40% increase in people who are unhoused over the last 3 to 4 years. And so I think when you look at, I think everyone in the room is now seeing tents and encampments that they did not think that they saw pre-pandemic. And that is true, and that the numbers are reflected in terms of people's own experiences of what you see when you drive by or in your own neighborhoods. We're seeing an increase, and I do think the one important piece is that we are chalking it up, I think, sometimes to some simplistic notions as to what's happening, and that's generally what we do around public policy issues. But we can't discount the impact of poverty. So we've seen a 30 to 40% increase in folks who are unhoused. We've seen a 30 to 40% increase in rents over the last 5 to 10 years. We've also seen real challenges around the toxic drug overdose. Again, fentanyl was not in the equation 5 to 10 years ago. So we're losing 10 people every day to toxic drug overdoses, which we had not lost at this rate 10 or 15 years ago. And for the folks in the room who might look at this from an economic perspective, it costs $30,000 to keep one of these patients, one of my patients, in the hospital for a month. It costs $15,000 to keep someone in the prison system, which a dear colleague of mine, Lana Fredo, calls the de facto mental health system, because people have nowhere else to go and they end up in the criminal justice system. And it costs $7,000 to keep people in a shelter versus $3,500 for supportive housing. So whether it's economics or social justice, the status quo is really not affordable on human dignity and health economics. So I hope that answers the trends.
We're going to change direction a little bit, I think. So this is in support of the Iranian Studies students. So I know for a fact that you're both amazing mentors. That's okay. So we'll get to that. Is there a question there? Okay. So you're both amazing mentors. And, to be a good mentor takes, obviously, a set of skills that you've learned from your previous mentors, and taking the time to ensure that whoever you're mentoring is actually going to succeed. So I'm just wondering whether you can comment on whether or not, or what role strong mentors played in your career development to get you to where you are now, what you learned from, and what makes an effective mentor. If you could guide the students in terms of how to identify a mentor, how to know if that mentor is right for them. So along the idea of mentorship, any aspect of it you'd want to tackle?
Sure, I'll go first. I have to say I've been extremely fortunate to have incredible role models in my life, as Andrew mentioned, my parents first and foremost. And along the way, I've had many incredible surgeon mentors. What I felt a lack of was female mentors. And I think in the field, in any field, whether it's business or medicine and science, it's really important to see yourself represented in leadership. And so in male-dominant professions, such as surgery, there's a lack of female representation in important roles. And so I have to say that the first half of my career, the past 25 years, there was a struggle to find mentors that would not only give me advice, but who would take my hand and basically walk me through the door to opportunities that were available out there. And I think any good mentor is someone who has gone through these struggles themselves and understands the importance to provide sense of belonging and direction and to be inclusive. And so for myself, my focus is to make sure the field of surgery is one that is inclusive of women, that makes them feel at home and comfortable, and make their journey easier than what it was in my era.
Yeah, I think the question of mentorship, and like Dr. Maysami, I think you can't discount the importance. I think obviously the role modeling that we get from our parents and obviously the community is incredibly important. But I would say from my own reflections around access to mentorship, especially those who are Iranian Canadian, it hasn't been as widely available. And I think some of the reasons that Dr. Maysami laid out, whether it's around gender disparities, taking on different new areas of work. So I think for me, mentorship, though, is incredibly important because there are so many mentors to thank and I'm indebted to that have allowed us to try to do this work at a relatively early stage in my career. So it has to be clear that a lot of what we're doing is on the shoulders of giants who've pushed this both here in Canada but also globally. And so that I think can never really be lost in terms of as some of this work is framed and looked at as being really new and progressive. The roots and histories of this have a long current and vein. I would say really in terms of mentorship, what I've found that has been helpful is in terms of where I'm now in that side of the spectrum and the continuum is to come with passion around the kind of ideas that you want. I think a lot of what we've been reading and inundated with is around, networking, being able to ensure that you're out at every function or as a student, every social event. And there's a lot of FOMO that can come with that. I see students are really anxious because they're like, am I missing this event? And is this going to have a huge negative impact on my career? And my views on where mentorship has worked well is when you approach someone in the field with a genuine question or passion about what you want to be doing, whether it's with Dr. Maysami around surgery or looking at various elements of partner violence, of IPV. I find for myself when people reaching out and say, this is what I've been looking at, I've looked at it from this perspective, I really want to meet to talk through these ideas. I think it really allows there to foster a relationship rooted in the intellectual aspect, but then also around where the passion becomes really clear. And I think actually just outside before we came in, very smart young man was asking me, was like, parents may want them to go to medicine, but is really excited about law and politics and is really passionate about it. And like, now not that he asked what he should do, but was obviously really struggling. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, my advice to him was to follow his passion. And I think, and then the question was, well, is there more hard work in law than in medicine? In my view, is you're passionate at anything, you're going to work incredibly hard. And I think from that element of being able to find mentors that can recognize that, work with you to cultivate your ideas, I think that's when it's been the most successful and actually the most exciting in working with students and residents at various levels.
Thank you. I think for me, I'm an inherently lazy person. So I think one of the aspects of mentorship is to kind of push the person you're mentoring. I was lucky enough to know Dr. Brian Kavanagh, who's sadly no longer with us, but the comment that when I was thinking of applying, whether or not I should apply for the next position, the leadership position or whatever, he said one sentence to me that stuck to me in my brain for a long time, and this was, "Where's your ambition, man?" So based on that, I think that one sentence from a good mentor has pushed me along to kind of counteract my inherent laziness and inertia. So I guess the question comes down to, is ambition a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a dirty word in our current situation, arena that we're working at, or is it something that we should act to promote and encourage?
That's a great question, and I also miss Dr. Kavanagh. I had the pleasure of briefly being trained by him. I don't think ambition is a dirty word when you choose your calling from the gut and you're completely honest with yourself. So I completely agree with Dr. Bouzeri. And anytime I'm asked by my students, I answer the same thing. Do what you love, because that is your drive, and that's what gets you up in the morning, and it makes your life anything but mundane, and it propels you forward. And I think that if you're doing what you love and you stay present in all aspects of what you do, you continuously see opportunities and doors opening along your field that give you a chance for growth and for furthering your knowledge. So I think that's the key to nurture that genuine interest.
Yeah, ambition you get so philosophical, which is great. I feel like this is a question for Chaim or Hafez, so we'll try as physicians to add some insights to the root of ambition. And I fully agree with Dr. Maysami. I think it depends on the purpose that you're drawing from what you want to be doing. And I do think, there's long histories and views of where you can commit your mind and your energy. And I think, as Krisha Freeland laid out, there's so much energy and talent in the Iranian community. And I think around where, I don't think ambition is a bad thing. I think there should be, in my experience, a chip on our shoulder about what we can do in this country, in this society. I mean, I don't have to look back very far. It was 2001, I was in high school, and we were not really ever recognized, and then we were the axis of evil. And the views of the world around what we were doing, or what many of us came to try to embetter the country, but as well as our own family and our own lives, I think was thrown into question at very populist and discriminatory ways. And so I think you shouldn't run your life to try to disprove myths and systemic discrimination, but I do think the realities are that for many of us, it has always felt like we've had to scrape and push into areas and spaces that have not always been inviting to the Iranian and Persian community. And I do think, again, about a mentor, who just passed a few years ago, Dr. Paul Farmer, who was my mentor at Harvard, and when we worked in Rwanda. And I think the way of framing this work, and one of his lines that has always stayed with me, is that all medicine should be viewed as social justice work, given how rife the inequities are, both here and across the world. And so I think carrying that in terms of that ambition, of what that means in terms of whether it's through foundations, through clinical work. I mean, the panelists that we're going to be having coming up are doing such incredible work in different disciplines. And I think whether it's in clinical medicine or outside, ambition has to be embraced, but I hope not at the cost of losing yourself or your own soul in that process. And that's where I do think community is so vital.
Thanks. I think I've read that quote. Actually, you've put that on Twitter, and I refuse to update my Twitter. It's still Twitter to me, not X. So yeah, I've read that. So thank you. And I think another big part of it is your ambition shouldn't put other people down or disadvantage other people. I truly believe in, and the rising tide lifts all boats. And I think if you go by that principle, then ambition itself is not harmful. In fact, it's advantageous. It's what moves society forward, what moves our culture, makes sure our culture continues to advance, and our role in this society continues to increase and becomes more impactful. So thank you both for that. So there was a question there, was there, or not? Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Wonderful points that you have made. We have a lot of youngsters in the audience today. So what I want to ask is about a story that you can tell us. Many successful people that I have talked to, they say that at some point in their career, it dawned on them that this is my calling. This is it. This is I was born to do. But when young people ask me, well, I don't know what I want to do. Did you know what you want to do? Most of the time I say no. Nobody knows what they want to do. There are a lot of options. There are courses, options. You go to university, there are different internships, different jobs. But at some point in your life, you will find it. And I was wondering if you could tell us any stories about when it dawned on you that this is it. This is what I was born to do.
Who wants to go ahead?
That's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. I don't think I can recall just one moment. There have been many moments in my adult life that I felt, yeah, this is great. I identify with this, and this is fantastic. I think what I really want to point out, though, is that when the moments of setback in my life have been the moments that have defined me. And so when I look back at the past 30 years of my adult life, those devastating moments where I just curled into fetal position and cried probably 4 days, those were the moments that touched me the most. And out of that pain came the vision and sort of the power and the urge to want to change and do more. So I think the right answer is to say, no, it's not just one moment, but we continue to evolve and develop in our lives, and it's really important to pay attention to that voice inside. And if I can impart some words of wisdom, I would say be kind to yourself. To our young students, be kind to yourself and give yourself time for solutions to show themselves. If you can't make a decision right there and then, don't make any decisions at all. You can cruise for a while until you find the answers. So I don't think there was ever an aha moment rather than, okay, well, this didn't work out. Now, what do I do now? How can I reach where I was going? And then you take that detour, and then you find a world beyond, before you, and you think, oh my God, this is so amazing. I'm really glad that this happened. And I like to share this, with the students, and I try and share it with my residents as often as I can when they ask me these questions. And I say that it's I was in second year university. And I was quite young. I was 17 years old. So back then, we had to do grade 13. So I was really 2 or 3 years younger than the rest of the students. And I was quite immature for second year level university. And, I remember I was so unprepared for, I think it must have been organic chemistry, I can't even recall, that at the December exam, I had stayed up all night to study. I put my head down and I slept through the 3-hour exam. And I walked out and I thought, that's it. My life is over. I'm a loser. I might as well just drop out. And I dropped out. I dropped out of university and I took the rest of the year off. And thanks to my parents, they said, come back to Iran. We will hammer into you what you will be doing for the rest of your life. And so a few months of love and nurturing by my parents brought me right back. And so, and the rest is history. But, I tell high school students all the time, it's great to take that year off, and it's great to stop and look around and figure things out.
Did you have anything to add to that, Andrew?
I think that's a great story. We'll leave it with that. Yeah.
I think the people who know what they want to do from early on, they're lucky in some ways, but they're unlucky in other ways because you don't get to explore. We get fellows from all over the world coming in just to take a year off to see what it's like in Toronto and in Canada. And they travel. They see more of Canada in a year that they're here, even though we only give them 2 weeks of vacation. I don't know how the hell they do it. But anyway, they see more of Canada in a year that they're here that I've seen in the past 40 years or so that I've been here. So it's, in some ways, it's good to know what you want, but in many other ways, it's great not to know what you want and just essentially let the world come to you, I think, and then figure out the best path forward. I think there were other questions, right?
It was such a good question. I believe the question, so I don't adulterate it was, is there any policy work that's coming into play around a major gap with respect to access to psychotherapy, which is currently in play? And I would say that this is one of the major shortcomings in our system when we look at evidence-based healthcare, and mental health has long been sidelined from a lot of the advances. So I thought it was a genuinely terrific question. We are seeing some advances, but I'd say not enough. And this has been some of my critique publicly about saying we do not have a universal healthcare system, and we should stop resting on our laurels being beside the United States, because it's coming at a serious cost when you look at other OECD countries. For example, the UK has just put major funding and investment around policy in the last 3 to 4 years to expand access to free psychotherapy, or at least more accessible psychotherapy. So I think these are real challenges. I know that the Deputy Prime Minister is just here, an important announcement around pharmacare. Many advocates continue to push around access to psychotherapy. And then again, I think, how can you talk about access to mental health or improving mental health when hundreds of thousands of people don't have access to housing who would not be able to access psychotherapy? So obviously there's this connection and continuum between the work. Unfortunately, it's been a piecemeal approach on how we want to remedy the healthcare system, but the evidence and the cost-benefit analysis on psychotherapy is too good to ignore, and I appreciate you raising that point.
Not just psychotherapy, I think the whole, as you mentioned, the area of support for psychiatric disorders, especially as we've taken away resources for the right ideology, which is independence and not forcing the state's decisions on individuals without providing that infrastructure that's needed to support it. The same thing's happening with drug, for example, legalizing drugs and seeing the downsides of that without providing the social support. So how can we strengthen the safety net so that as we give more autonomy to our disadvantaged populations for whatever reason, they don't fall through the cracks and end up in those tent cities that we were seeing?
Yeah, it's a major question. You want to go ahead?
No, I just wanted to make a comment that, one of the areas that is particularly important to work on is public awareness, and, sort of dissociating use of drug and mental illness as, evil, and understanding the root and source of addiction and mental health, and understanding trauma. And understand that human beings, there's only so much they can tolerate, and so somehow they have to reach out, and they're damaged, and so they have to seek treatment for their trauma, and they self-medicate, or a lot of them fall into illnesses that is beyond their control.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant point, and maybe I'll try to controversially stitch together the last question on this. I do think, without trying to impart too much for the young folks in the room, the amount of pressure that I think is on people right now is massive. And it really breaks my heart, actually, in seeing so many smart young people berating themselves because they haven't figured out what their 5-year plan is. And I would be really, Dr. Maysami put this out, to take care of yourself, and I know we have different notions of self-care. But really, I think if anyone goes on stage or anyone tells you they had it all figured out up to a T up until they were a certain stage and full professor, I mean, they could sell you waterfront property in Idaho. Like, it's bad. Like, that would be a very, I would find disingenuous thing to say, and it continues to put this pressure on people. Imposter syndrome continues for so many people, regardless of however esteemed you are in the university or in the hospital. And I think this sense of the pressure and not being able to ask for help is massive. And so I would say, make sure you are getting the supports. In many ways, it's psychotherapy. In many ways, it's talking to friends and a support network. But we see many people suffer silently with mental health because of the stigma and the shame that comes with it. And I see it especially in my practice amongst young people. And I would really push against those notions. And part of it is everything looks perfect on social media to everything else, and all of us have to stand up here and say we knew exactly what we were going to do at this time, at this point. And I didn't have a specific aha moment. I do think one part we have to be open about is that pain and suffering has actually informed the resilience that I think many of us have had. And whether that's intergenerational, whether that's what's played out in your own life to flee whatever circumstances, or continue to have seeing very dark circumstances in the world, that is a real source of resilience, and that is a real source of whether you call it ambition or drive or purpose. And I wouldn't shy away from that, but I would make sure we approach it in a way that's actually healthy in the dynamic and allows you to attain what you want, and understanding. I didn't know that I was going to be in this role 5 years ago, to be honest. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, but I think the tenets and principles around trying to have the integrity to do the work, to continue to look for advice, and myself still looking at mentorship and seeing how that plays out, to talk through these issues. I hope we don't try to sugarcoat or put a very shiny veneer on what I'm sure for all three of us and all four of us has been a lot of ups and downs, pain and suffering, and a lot of self-doubt.
I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your role.
Don't need to apologize.
Can I just bring that back to the role of mentors? You know, the three of us, the four of us with Dr. Zadeh, we are clinicians. That's what we love to do in our hearts. We're healthcare providers, and you know, what my husband always points out to me is you're a care provider. Your job is to take care of people, and that's what we do first and foremost. So, you know, I think the message from us today is that we're here and we want to help students, and we're here to guide you and support you. So I think the beauty of panels like this is to know who the members of your village are that you can rely on, and you can reach out for help. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and it goes back to a question about that the students and young people often have.
That would have been a great way to end the session, but we have 10 minutes left. So any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask, you brought up resilience, and you said that the hardships actually kind of strengthen your resilience. But it's a chicken and egg situation. Do you have to be resilient to be able to tolerate the hardships in your life? Or is there some other characteristic or personality trait that makes you resilient so that you're able to tolerate the hardships in your life?
Well, I think there are a confluence of things, and I think anything done in isolation makes it that much harder. So if you have to deal with hardship and pain on your own, I think that's almost impossible. And there's instances, but I think if you look at the literature, it makes it far harder than when you have a support network or other ways to be able to address the issues. I mean, I will be very open and direct and say I think that for my own resilience, if it wasn't for my mother along the way about imparting a lot of that resilience, a lot of that sense of fairness, the fact that things may not always go your way, but you have to continue to work, and that your break will come, and have that faith, whether that's religious, secular, within your own community. I cannot overstate how important that was. And I think it's, again, the sense of the individual. You come up and you say, well, of course, resilience is great. We could have dealt with it. But if you're not clear about how that came to be, and also to acknowledge people like our parents or community, but then also the opportunity to have the network is really important. And I know you mentioned the chicken and egg and the causation piece. Unfortunately, some folks have more predisposition to some challenges, but I think when you look at what happens around mental health, there are really evidence-based things in place that can help you move through resilience. But I wouldn't want it to pathologize it and sort of saying it's all about self-care in the situation. There's real evidence-informed things that you can do. And I think, as Dr. Maysami mentioned, I think to be transparent and open with yourself, but that does require all of us to not shame and stigmatize each other for the challenges that we're having. And I think we've seen amazing advances in technology in medicine. We've seen a lot around precision medicine. But when it comes to how we treat each other as human beings, I would make the argument we've actually regressed. And that's a huge element around care, about compassion. And what I will say, we've talked about imparting advice for young people. What I love seeing in this next generation that I work with very closely is the empathy that they have, the sense of social justice. They are so willing to take risk, to speak their mind, to look out for each other in a way that I did not see in my generation, and many, in some ways, maybe the generation above. So I think there's so much to be encouraged about, but I think we have to create the right conditions for our young generation to thrive.
That's a really good point. Thanks. Go ahead, Tina. Anything to add?
I think that's a great answer. And I think if someone, I think it's important to understand that you can create resilience, if you don't have the support. And we all developed it with hardship. And so that point about working on yourself and on your mind and strengthening and making yourself powerful, I think those are ultimately things that one has to strive to achieve. And I think we have a question here.
Yes, go ahead. The microphone's not on there.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Happy late Nowruz. I feel so proud to see three representatives of Iranian Canadians in the field of medicine and dentistry. So my question is regarding the relation between what you do and what's happening in Iran. So it's been in the news that there's a huge brain drain of Iranian dentists and physicians, not just to Canada, but everywhere in the world. And to me, the way to basically reverse this process, or think about it at least, is to think about either reverse brain drain or brain circulation. So I want to ask from your perspective and practice experiences, are you somehow exchanging and collaborating with Iranian physicians and dentists in diaspora, including in Canada and ones back in Iran? And what role do you think the Iranian Studies Department can play in terms of facilitating this exchange and brain circulation? Because that, to me, is basically what can bring change eventually to Iran, in the sense of bringing all the talents together.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the concept of brain drain is a really good concept, not just from Iran, but we're taking the best and the brightest from all over the world to come to Canada. And you might say that's a problem, but my basic philosophy is I'm a liberal Democrat, so I believe in providing the best life opportunities for individuals. And if that means leaving your country and coming to a better place, then so be it. It's up to the country to improve itself, so to retain those things. It's not up to Canada to say, no, we're not going to take your best. With that in mind, I think it definitely used to be a lot easier to have that exchange with our Iranian colleagues. I found it there's been a lot less exchange. And from my side, I don't know what I can do to improve it. I'm just going to, with that, hand it over.
I'd like to echo what you said. And, in my field, maxillofacial surgery, the connection that we have is in research and really publications and literature. And so, and I love that about our fields, because that creates a flat plane. Puts it, regardless of where you're living, the collaborations are possible. They're a lot easier now than they have been in the past. And personally speaking, I seek out Iranian colleagues in every conference, and I try and reach out to them when I read an interesting publication, for example, that's coming out of Iran. And so I find that the boundaries are gone, and it's a lot easier to have international collaboration with Iran or otherwise, I think the focus is on the individuals and not necessarily the geographic location.
Yeah, and I agree with the points, and maybe I'd speak bluntly. I don't think we're doing enough as of yet, and I think there's individual efforts, but from a community perspective, and I think in terms of what we can be doing, I think both Dr. Karkoudi and Dr. Misami, I think, are exemplar in reaching out and making those active efforts. But when you look at, I think, the points around how much individual contribution there's been in Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Surgery, Dentistry, there's a whole lot of individual talent and accolades, and I think really where the opportunity, I think, is better stitch this together and to see more of a coalition of this sort of work so that people who are here have more opportunities, but also people who were born here and looking at interest these pieces about how they can connect. We talked, I think, a theme today about mentorship. So again, I'm really grateful for Ali pulling this together, many sponsors, many people making something like this today happen. And this is one of the first events I've been to and invited to in terms of trying to bridge some of this work. And I think really, in terms of the brain drain, I think there's a lot of potential. And I would have the same philosophic views. You can't judge or deny people opportunities when systems are failing them, whether it's here in Toronto or in Iran.
Thank you very much. I think we're right at time. So with that, I will end it. And I'm just going to say ditto to what Dr. Maysami said about us being there to support each other. So reach out to any one of us and any of your other expats from Iran that you see who have succeeded and in various fields. And I'm sure all of us would be more than happy to do everything we can to help you succeed too. Thank you, everybody, for your
Thank you, Dr. Maysami, Dr. Bouzari, and Dr. Karkuti for your inspirational presentation and wise advice, which will help me to chart out the remaining decades of my life, and I'm sure the same is true for the rest of the people here. Now we have another session of poetry recitation and musical performance featuring Murtaza Namdari, Nagme Farahmand, and Farzaneh Hosseini, who is a distinguished poet of Afghanistan. Please call it.
با درود و سلام خدمت مهمانان عالی قدر، دوستان حاضر در محفل و ضمن عرض تبریک به مناسبت نوروز و سال نو. خوشحالم که امروز در جمع شما عزیزان هستم. امیدوارم تا با خواندن چند پارچه شعر سهم خود را در این محفل با شکوه ادا نمایم. اولین شعری که به حضورتان به خوانش میگیرم تحت عنوان نوروز و بهار است. امید که مورد پسند شما سروران گرامی قرار گیرد. نوروز صفای چمن و گل باشد، نوروز صفای چمن و گل باشد، آهنگ هزار صوت بلبل باشد، نرگس به خمار چشم خود باز کند، خوشبوی نگر که زلف سنبل باشد، گل فرش شود زیر قدم‌های بهار، گل فرش شود زیر قدم‌های بهار، گلدان بلور سبز و پرگل باشد، پاکیزه شود چمن ز باران بهار، هر جا نگری پر از تجمل باشد، شمشاد و بلوط و ارغوان و ناجو بنگر که چسان بر رشد و در تکامل باشد، آشفته ترین روان بینی که چسان هنگام بهار در تعادل باشد، با معجزه بهار بیتاب دل با صبر و قرار و پرتحمل باشد، شادی و سرور به قلب ها رخ نکند، با قصه و غم در تعامل باشد. بخشد به همه صفا نفسهای بهار، القصه در این سخن تعامل باشد. ساحل و چمن درآ مستانه بخند، ساحل و چمن درآ مستانه بخند، که این فرصت عمر در تزلزل باشد، که این فرصت عمر در تزلزل باشد. تشکر. شعر بعدی که خدمتتان به خوانش میگیرم هم بهاری است و هم عاشقانه. چه خوش بود که تو در بوستان قدم بزنی، چه خوش بود که تو در بوستان قدم بزنی، سکوت سرد چمن را دمی به هم بزنی، به مرغکان چمن شوری عاشقانه دهی، و پشت پا و سرا پرده علم بزنی. بهار یعنی که هر لحظه عاشقم باشی و بخت و طالع ما را خودت رقم بزنی، و اشتیاق بگیری تو دست گرم مرا، شرر به جان و دل از حال تا عدم بزنی، به من تو عشق بورزی و من غزل سازم، به من تو عشق بورزی و من غزل سازم، تو شاخه گل سرخی سری صنم بزنی، کنار جوی نشینیم و عشق هدیه کنیم، تو طعنه از دل گرمت به ساز غم بزنی. بهار یعنی تو باشی و عشق و خلوت راز، بهار یعنی تو باشی و عشق و خلوت راز، چی حاجت است که حرفی ز بیش و کم بزنی، و زورقی که تمنای ساحلش باشد، و زورقی که تمنای ساحلش باشد، چو باد شرطه شوی از کمال دم بزنی. و آخرین شعرم تحت عنوان جاری است که خدمت شما تقدیم میکنم. در من انگار یک غزل جاری است، شادی و شور بی خلل جاری است، با من اینک بهار زاده شده، ماه فرخنده حمل جاری است، می تراود ز دل سرور و نشاط، می تراود ز دل سرور و نشاط، بر لبم بوسه عسل جاری است، شده آغاز فصل خندیدن، شده آغاز فصل خندیدن، غنچه را شور بی مثل جاری است، از شگوفه چمن چراغان شد، از شگوفه چمن چراغان شد، عطر سنبل در این محل جاری است، عشق را با بهار شگوفا کن، عشق را با بهار شگوفا کن، بحر درد تو راه حل جاری است، آیه یأس را اگر خوانی گویا بانگ بی محل جاری است، در پی ارتعاش شعله شمع مرگ پروانه بی اجل جاری است، کوش تا چون سمن جوانه زنی، کوش تا چون سمن جوانه زنی، آب و باران در بغل جاری است، ساحل از عمر خویش بهره بجوی، ساحل از عمر خویش بهره بجوی، که تو را عشق از ازل جاری است، که تو را عشق از ازل جاری است. از توجه همه شما عزیزان متشکرم.
As you see on the screen, our event is called دید و بازدید و سپاس نوروزی. And on this special occasion, we have decided to start the first of our Nowruz Sepos Award. And this year we are rewarding Nowruz 2024 Sepos Award for outstanding public service to two distinguished members of Iranian community who have worked exceptionally in two domains, one of them in the areas of culture and art. And this award goes to Mr. Mehdad Aryan Nejad, and the text reads, presented with sincere appreciation and in recognition of the extraordinary commitment you have demonstrated in entrenching the footprint and advancing the resonance of Iranian arts and culture in Canada. Mr. Aryan Nejad.
Thank you. فرزند خستگی ناپذیر ایران زمین واقعا.
And the award is jointly presented by the Institute of Iranian Studies and the Office of MP Ali Ehsasi.
Thank you very much. I didn't actually prepare anything for today, but I'm humbled. Thank you very much, Ali Jan, Dr. Tawakkoli, for this award, for recognizing me for this award, and I'm really humbled. Appreciate it very much. Just one note that we Iranians, it's time for us to get united all across the world. We have strong communities. We have very successful individuals. We have strong institutions, and it's time to get unified, because without unity, we wouldn't get anywhere. I think Iranians inside Iran expect us to get unified and united. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mehdad, for those words of wisdom. We've all had the incredible opportunity to watch him pull teams of volunteers together for over 20 years. But we also have another award that we're giving out today, the Sepos Award. And as you can imagine, it's always difficult because what we are trying to demonstrate today is that there are Iranians who are at the forefront of numerous different sectors. But given that we are currently in a climate where housing is in such short supply, and I don't think I have to persuade anyone that we have seen so many outstanding Iranian Canadian engineers, architects really changing the skyline of this country. So we thought that housing being as important that it is, that we also give out an award for that as well. And it's a difficult one because, as I said, we are truly, truly blessed to have amazing people working day in and day out in that sector. But I think it will come as no surprise to you that our next recipient is Mr. Saida Aghai from Times Group. And just to give you a sense of the scale of what they have been doing for many decades now, they are responsible for having built well over 4,000 housing units in the city of Toronto and in the suburbs as well. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Saeed Al-Ghai, who I always tell everyone is such a gentleman, has always been there supporting numerous initiatives that occur in our riding.
من راحتم که با شما فارسی حرف بزنم. اولا سال نو را تبریک میگم. امیدوارم که سال بسیار خوبی برای سرکار همه خانم‌ها آقایون علل خصوص به هموطنان ایرانی ما چه در ایران در اینجا باشه. و موفقیت ما مرهون تمام گروه‌هایی است که بیشترشان ایرانی در تایمز گروپ بودن. علل خصوص شریک من آقای مهندس هاشم قدکی، آقای علی خان مسکرزاده، همه با هم دست به دست هم دادیم تونستیم که یه شرکتی درست کنیم که بالای 5-6 هزار یونیت تو این منطقه ساختیم و این هم جز همکاری و یعنی فکر دست جمعی نمیتونست بشه. Thank you all of the people. They was working in our office even ایرانی نبودن، چاینیز، نان چاینیز، همه آدمایی که با ما کار کردن از صمیم دل به ما کمک کردن تا تونستیم این کار انجام بدیم. Thank you Canada, they give us such opportunity, the banks, everybody to helping us to do whatever we did. Many thanks from you. جناب علی خان بسیار متشکرم، خیلی ممنون، همواره کامیونیتی ما را جلو بردی، ما به تو افتخار میکنیم.
Well, this was really a great moment recognizing distinguished members of Iranian community and their contribution to the advancement of life in Canada. Our next panel, Innovative Visionaries, features Gina Parvaneh Kodi and Sam Saif. This panel will be directed and the discussant will be my colleague, MP Ali Ehsasi.
I think it's just going to be the two of us now.
Yes. I'm going to ask you a question, you ask me.
That's right. Well, doctor, I'm going to ask you. How does it feel to be the only PhD female engineer that has their name on a university in Canada?
Wow. Should we steal the show from Ali?
Yeah, well.
Ali, where are you?
He's probably smoozing in the back somewhere.
Wow. I guess it's a tough question, Sam. And firstly, I'm privileged to be with all of you. Ali is here now. We started.
So for this second panel, we're truly, truly blessed to have two extraordinary individuals up on stage with me here today. I should say that both of them are such public figures that they really, really need no introduction. First of all, as you know, Sam is a regular contributor to economic news. His commentary on the economy is always welcome by Bloomberg and all sorts of other news outlets. So he's a personality who's well known to us all.
I just have to add, anytime I took Air Canada, I had to put up with Sam's message.
And I'm just the actor that they keep inviting me to keep coming to these events, and I'm not certain why.
You're good looking to look at, so that was fun.
Also, we're incredibly grateful to have here with us Ms. Gina Cody. As you know, and this is something I often tell people, I always knew she was an extraordinary person, but if I needed any confirmation for that, I do remember that Peter Mansbridge's book came out a couple of years ago, and he devoted one of the chapters of his book to Gina Cody. So Gina Cody is also well known to you because she happens to be the Faculty of Engineering at Concordia University actually bears her name, which is very, very rare, very, very unique. The one thing I would like to update everyone on, since Peter Mansbridge's book came out, and I think we can all agree he's got a very good crystal ball, but since then, Ms. Cody has become a member of the Order of Canada as well. So I really do feel like a bit of a peeping Tom. I've just been reading up on both of you, and there's just so much information available about your accomplishments and all that you have done in your extraordinary careers. Allow me to start off with Ms. Cody. Ms. Cody, I understand that in 1979, when the tumult was going on around many of us in Iran, you decided to leave and you land in the city of Montreal. So would you mind explaining to us why it is that you landed in the city of Montreal and why you ended up at Concordia University?
Well, going back 45 years almost, it was during the hostage crisis, for those of you that were born there. A lot of you weren't even. I left Iran during actually Labor Day weekend. And the last day that the classes start on Tuesday, I arrived in Montreal. And my brother was there, so that's why I came to Montreal. And I was supposed to go actually to McGill, another university. And my brother said, and I had $2,000 in my pocket. That's all I had. During a time that you couldn't even bring money out of Iran, and my tuition was double that. You know, being a young Iranian woman, we were very fearless, right? So I had no notion of what I'm going to do, but I arrived, and when I arrived, my brother said, there's this professor, I mentioned to him at a bar that my sister is arriving, and he says, why don't I meet her? And that was during his graduation. He graduated from Concordia. So he had said before she registers at the other university, bring her to meet me. So Tuesday morning, I go to see this professor. I hand him my marks, and I graduated from then RMR University, which is called Sharif University now. I had great marks, and my English wasn't bad. So I had an interview with this professor. And then after an hour, he says, why would you go anywhere else? I'm going to give you a scholarship. Oh, wow. And I said, wow, thank you. So he took me to the registrar office. Now, this is 45 years ago. He says, he gave them my acceptance for the other university. He says, type her an acceptance. And they did it. And says, by the way, I want you to go to the Immigration Canada and get your work permit. So they gave me a letter, and this is by 10:30 in the morning. I come out, and I tell my brother, where's Immigration Canada? I have to go there to get my work permit. He said, I have been living here for 5 years. I don't have that, and you're getting it. So that was the long story short. That's how I ended up there.
So good on Concordia University to recognize your brilliance and to snatch you up in the manner in which they did. Now, I know that Concordia University at the time, they were so incredibly impressed with you that they gave you a scholarship, You became the first female TA at the Faculty of Engineering there. And every time the university was trying to impress incoming students or various publications that rank their university, they would always trot out Dr. Cody. There's, as far as I understand, there was another individual in Montreal who was incredibly impressed with you as well. I don't think he was at your faculty, but I did read that Mr. Cody actually approached you. He was very much impressed with you, and if you would mind sharing with us how he tried to impress you so that...
I tell you one thing, if you want to succeed, perseverance pays. So Tom, who was doing his MBA at the time and I was doing my master, we had our own annex for my faculty, and Tom had a lounge there for MBA students. So every morning I would show up at 7 a.m. and this man was standing by the elevator. And by chance, he would just meet me. And then he would knock at my office door and would say, I don't have a quarter to use, at those times actually it was a dime, to use the public phone. Can I use your phone? And I said, okay, you can use my phone. So that's how, and then he would come and talk about the geography and history of Iran with me. He knew more about that than I did because he studied the night before. So that's how I ended up marrying him.
Incredibly brilliant. And I understand Mr. Cody is actually here with us this evening. Now, if I can switch to you, Sam. You had a very different trajectory. You've been on a very different journey, if I may say so. And I understand you started off at Elahé for high school, which is a couple of blocks away here. You ended up at the University of Toronto. You did engineering as well. And then you went to RBC at the ripe age, I would think, of 22, 23. But as we all know, the hours can be incredibly punishing. So what did you learn during those years at RBC, and how did you want to do things differently?
Well, I mean, I think as a young person, growing up in this country, the thing you see is the people around you, and my parents, of course, worked extremely hard, making a great life for us as kids here. And when I went to university, I had big ambitions and big goals of what I wanted to do in life. And the best training was to go work within the bank, specifically in investment banking. Anyone who's ever kind of known anybody in investment banking, it is truly 80 to 100 hours a week of work. I always used to say by Tuesday I've worked 40-hour week. It's pretty normal. And it was intense. But it was, for the first 6 years of my career, one of the greatest learnings because what it did was, when I decided to leave, I compounded in 6 years a 12-year career, effectively. If you think about the 10,000 hours rules and all the principles of effort and time, I learned in 6 years what normal people would have worked at 12 years. And I just kept doing that. So when I decided to leave RBC and start my first company, I had already built an established understanding of my willingness to go to what lengths. And anyone who's built a business, you know that starting a company takes huge effort, huge energy, and that effort is about what your limitations are. And I knew that I had pretty high limitations, and so that's the core to it. And then as my life has gone on, I've continued that. For the first for my first business, I worked pretty much those same hours. In my new businesses, I work very different hours. I have 4 kids at home, and I have many other interests as well. And so I've been able to be smarter, as you say. When you're younger, you're not as smart with your time. You just put a lot of effort into things. As you get older, we learn how to use our time more efficiently, so you can actually be focused on the wisdom that you bring to the problems you're solving, as opposed to just the sheer effort and will. And today, I have a very, very balanced life. I'd say from anyone else's perspective, imbalanced because of all the different things we do. But I have found a way to balance a lot of different things, juggle a lot of things in a really efficient way for the needs and the priorities I have.
Absolutely. So I think it would be fair that RBC was trying to transform you, but then you decided, well, that's not what you were all about. And you, in your own right, decided to transform the banking industry and the investment industry in Canada. Would you mind explaining to us, what you did when you were 28 years old? I just look at your career and I'm in awe of the decision that you made to go out there on your own. Could you tell us how you shook up the Canadian banking industry?
Sure. So the first start was that while I was in investment banking, I mean, it's a wonderful career and a wonderful life. But at some point, I woke up and realized it wasn't the thing I wanted to do when I was older. It's funny. When I was 25, I looked up and said, who do I want to be when I'm 45? Who inspires me within the company? And it's something I always give advice to young people is that, like, when you're working in an organization, find somebody that you say, I wouldn't mind that life, that person, what they've accomplished. And if that is the case, then wonderful. If you can't, then it's time to find something else. And I realized that at the age of 25, but I didn't know yet what it was. So that gave me the reason to say that I didn't want to be here forever. What sort of, it opened my mind to the idea that I wanted to do something. I didn't know if I wanted to build something myself or go work in an environment where I was going to be working with somebody else. But the most important thing I realized was that I wanted to see my ideas make progress. I always wanted to be an architect, and that was one of my ambitions. But it wasn't about the architecture. It was about the idea of seeing materiality of your accomplishments. And I realized the same at that moment. And I said, no matter what I do, I have to be able to see the ideas I have, the principal vision I have, actually in action and make the progress with that. And at the age of 28, it just sort of dawned on me that meant going and building a business. And I had no idea what I was doing. I started my company with the backing of a client of mine, and started in my living room, and ultimately built a pretty fantastic organization by really focusing on the problem that we were solving for, which was how do you build a better asset management firm in the country, competing at a time when we have a lot of incumbents that weren't doing a great job. This is the mid-2000s, and it ended up being a huge success. I sold it to BlackRock in 2012, and gave me a lot of confidence to do it again and repeat that and continue to innovate within the financial services industry. Today, I run my company Purpose that has been broadly diversifying and innovating. And then second is I also co-founded a firm called Wealthsimple, and really finding ways to help Canadians kind of see a better, what I always say, like, what great looks like.
If I can just inject one thing in there, you are far too modest, because the investment vehicle that you decided to launch has been so incredibly successful, and you had the vision to do that. It's been so incredibly successful that other banks are now trying to follow and pursue the model that you first established, which really speaks to how brilliant you are.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and it means a lot to hear that. But I would just say that it starts with a principle of thinking where everyone else will be in 5 years, 10 years from now, and being the player that acts. And so you have to have a vision. But the second thing is that a lot of people talk, very few people do. And my view is always to have a vision and actually execute on that vision. And then when I talk about make what great looks like, within financial services is really important, because there is no winner take all in financial services. It's a very fragmented industry, and that means that whatever you do, if you really want to have real impact, you actually have to bring others along. You have to bring the industry along. So you have to lead from the front, but you want to hope that the RBCs and the major players in the industry actually see it and start to replicate it, because that's how you have the greatest impact on the breadth of Canadians. More and more Canadians will get the benefit of what you're innovating and what you're leading on, and that's what I've always taken from how I built.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, Ms. Cody, if we could come back to you. You arrive in Toronto. At that point, I'm not quite sure whether Toronto is the financial capital of Canada, or whether it was still Montreal at that point. But obviously, when you arrived here, it wasn't easy for someone who had chosen your path. Could you just give us a glimmer of what life was like in the construction industry in the 1980s of Toronto?
I would say that when I came mid-80s to Toronto from Montreal, and the construction industry was extremely male-dominated. It still is. Has changed a little bit, but I can give you an example. I went to a conference. There were 700 attendees. I was the only woman. And when the MC started the meeting, the event said, "Lady and gentlemen." That's how bad it was. So, but having said that, I always, when I speak with the students and people who talk to me, I say, always take a negative and turn it to a positive. It may be a cliche, but really you can take these challenging issues and turn it around to your advantage. So what it meant that I have to do my job right. I had to be prepared, and there was no room for making mistakes. So you really had to study and be prepared. But the other side of the coin was they all remembered me. Everybody knew who Gina is because I was the only woman. So I will stand out. But that standing out, if I made the mistake, they would remember it as well. So that was the industry that I thrived in. And I think it worked somehow to my benefit, to be honest. Being that only woman in the room I didn't take it as challenging. It was challenging. It was hard. And there were times that I felt the pressure. And I did cry, Tina, as well. So, but those hardships, as Tina mentioned, it makes you grow and be a better person.
I don't think there's a single person here who would dare question your drive and your discipline and your hard work. One thing that is quite incredible is, as I understand, the construction company you were with, all the orders were coming in and everyone was looking for your sage guidance because you had made such an incredible name for yourself. But despite all those projects, within a few years, you're at the helm of your company, and that particular company was recognized at the time as one of the most profitable companies in the construction industry. So not only were you, a technical wizard, if I may, but you were also managing many, many things and did a magnificent job. So perhaps I should permit myself to ask you, given that you have done so exceptionally well in terms of building a team, building a company, what do you look for when you're looking for building a team at a company? What are the qualities that impress you?
I think dedication. And one of the things that is really important as a leader, and I'm sure Sam will hopefully agree with that, is that every person has got a niche. As a leader, if you find the niche in that person, they can thrive. So when I had all these engineers working for me, I would sit down and tell them that this area that you're working, if I move you to this area, you will be much better. And you can optimize your talent much better. Because everybody is really good at something, but they may not know it themselves. And you see that. And I have engineers that I would actually fire. I'd sit down and say, I think you're not meant to be in a consulting group. You're meant to go and be a builder. And they became my clients because that was their niche. So the most important thing as a leader, I think you have to find your group, what's their niche, what are they good at, and emphasize on that and really cultivate that. That's the first important thing. And also, as a leader, I think I always felt that I have to optimize. How do I optimize my operation? I never cared about the top line. I always looked at the bottom line. And I wanted to make that big. I really didn't want more jobs. I wanted good jobs. And I always used to say that sometimes bad clients take 70-80% of your time and they pay you a few percentage of your income. Get rid of them. Stick to your good clients. And that is where your company or whatever you do, your enterprise will succeed and you become profitable much faster, I would say, in that order.
Well, thank you for that. I know for myself, I'm going to start looking for my niche. Hope is still very
You may
much
have found
alive
it already. It's pretty good.
We need you, don't move.
But sage advice. If I could switch to you again, Sam. I'm sure you meet many captains of industry. You're in the C-suites because that's just the nature of the incredible work you do. But if I may, I want to take a different angle on this. You also, it's quite obvious, you're abreast of developments that are happening in our economy. You see those tectonic shifts that are occurring in our economy. What sectors are you bullish about? Because if you're bullish about something, I'm sure everyone will get bullish about it.
Well, I mean, I think, it's a tough question only because broadly, you know, every economy goes through many different cycles, right? And, you know, if I think about a great country or any economy that's thriving is that they are able to understand well in advance of the cycle booming, how to position and be investing in those areas early, and then understanding how to utilize talent, you know, investments, capital, all of it in conjunction. So, you know, that can be very relevant for a country like Canada that has, for the most part, done that very well historically within the energy sector and the mining sector, and in the housing sector. Those are three areas that are very important. The key thing is how do we sort of continue to do that in other areas of growth, in intellectual capital-driven and intellectual property-driven areas over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Because economically, if you watch the US, what they've done phenomenally well over the last 20 years is they got intellectual property rights perfect. And as a result of that, their economy has been growing phenomenally well relative, not just to Canada, but to Europe and some of the other developed countries around the world, because they have figured out how to innovate and put capital into the right areas at the right time in advance of the innovations really driving success and economic growth. I think in Canada, we have a couple of unique opportunities. AI, I know it gets a lot of attention today. Everyone, of course, has been inspired and wowed by what's happened and also fearful of what's happened. But I would say that Canada has one of the great advantages. It is slipping away because of us not, we have to really get it economically and from a government perspective. But we have huge talent that we have harnessed by being early in the AI and machine learning, data science spaces. Our universities are some of the still today, some of our professors are some of the best in the world. Some of the best companies that have been developed today were founded by people coming out of our universities. The key is, how do you harness that power back to our economy as opposed to going down into Silicon Valley or to the US? So that's an area that I think we have a huge advantage of. When we talk about climate and clean energy, we all understand the importance of it. And Canada gets the economics and the opportunity to be a great producer. We need to be excellent at the climate shift and the shift towards clean energy in a meaningful way. And then finally, I think infrastructure is a huge opportunity in this country, not only in just the ability to kind of build infrastructure. We are one of the great benefits, and we have all benefited from it, is that Canada is a great country, one of the leading top decile in the world for immigration. But it comes with two things that have got to make us great. One, we have to invest in the infrastructure to support that immigration, which we have been behind on. We have underinvested in that. We've got great immigration policy. We have got poor investment in infrastructure to support that. That's housing. That's the roads. That's the hospitals and the infrastructure that supports the growth of population that we need. The second is the accreditation that's critical to get people who come to this country who have phenomenal accreditation to be able to work in this country immediately, and we know that this is a big problem that we have today. So those two things are things that we could do wonderful things, and because we got the funnel right, we got the people coming, and they all want to come to Canada, but they won't want to come to Canada if we don't give them the opportunities and the infrastructure to support that.
Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. We should be doing a much better job capitalizing on all those opportunities that we do have. I'd be remiss if I didn't also ask you for some investment advice, because I know that I'm going to get lynched out there if I don't pose that question to you. So when it comes to investment advice, what is it that you generally talk about?
Don't listen to a person that's up on stage. That's what you don't listen to. No, fully. It is something that I mean that quite honestly. There's a lot of voices in this industry. One of my fundamental theses is that it's an industry that is noisy because it's in the best interest of the industry to be noisy, because they fragmented it and all the rest of it. The best thing is to have a very clear and disciplined approach to how you invest, and to understand the stage that you are at in investing, and whether that's the day you put your first check into investing, or the day that you are now taking your last check from your last payroll from your company, and now having to figure out how I'm going to make money for the rest of my life from that portfolio. Those are really important stages, and from an investor's perspective, it's really important to have a very structured approach to those. I will be remiss to say that the greatest investment product that ever was created in history was the defined benefit pension plan, and this industry has done everything it can over the last 40 years to move away from it in its own benefit and against the benefit of people. I would love that to come back. I would love us to get back to the world where everybody is covered by a defined benefit pension plan, because it really is the best bargain out there.
Thank you for that. Now, Ms. Cody, a few years ago, you decided, after many, many decades of hard work, you decided that you were going to sell your company and that you're going to spend more time with family. I know that's not necessarily true, because I don't think you're capable of being hands-off. And just to let everyone know, even though she says that I'm not as busy as I was, you are the chair of a TSX 60 company right now. So you do that. But even more importantly than that, you are devoting so much time and energy to philanthropic initiatives. And as I understand, you're very, very much concerned about making sure that when it comes to engineering, engineering is more inclusive. What is the challenge and what is the solution?
The challenge that I mentioned, I was the only woman in the room. Even though I tried to take advantage of that rather than taking it as a negative. I really wanted to change the course of the Canadian tone when it came to engineering. When I left Iran, 10% of our class were female at Sharif University. I came here, and when I started TAing, I was the first woman in engineering TAing as a woman. And I felt that this has to change. And to do that, we need more women. And it was more about coming from Iran. I saw how overnight the life of women can change. So, and I'm now living in Canada, and it gave me the opportunity it did, and I became who I am because I had great parents who really instilled in me that the way to women's success is through education. That's what my mom, since I was born, she used to say, you see your brothers, they can sleep on the street. You can't. You need to be independent, and the only way you get that is through education. So that is how it became that I emphasized by giving back to the university. That gave me the opportunity to succeed. And I wanted more women in engineering. That's all I wanted. And that was the notion that I started speaking about when nobody was talking about EDI. They didn't even know I was talking about in my speech was diversity, inclusion, and equality for women in the STEM field, because that was truly lacking. And my fear was that in the fourth industrial revolution that we live, if women don't get into those areas of practice, they will be left further behind. And if things in Iran can change, it can change in Canada too. So we need to be very, very forceful to keep our place in the society. And also we are living in a society that everything is developed by technology, whether it's in medicine, whether it is in economy, everything. Now it is technology driven. And if women don't participate, they always say that things are built by those who build them for themselves. Not that they don't care about the other side, that's all they know. So when you get into car accident, because all the car safety features are built for average men, women get injured 50% more seriously damaged because the features are not meant for a person like me who's short and small. It's made for average men. So that's why I wanted more women to get into engineering and computer science and really build the world of tomorrow. That's our duty.
Thank you for that. Now, Sam, I know much like Gina, you spend a lot of time doing community engagement, doing philanthropic activities. You sit on the AGO board, on Sunnybrook, on Defy Gravity, which is the University of Toronto initiative to raise money for the university. Why is that so incredibly important to you?
I love this country. The greatest gift my parents ever gave me was coming here. With all honesty, it was the greatest gift because it changed the probability of my success by what percentage? And I owe this country dearly. And so the best way I can do that is by giving back meaningfully to the community that I have grown up in and that has given me so much. The story that was, I talked about work ethic and all the rest of it, but one of the things I've always believed in this, and so I started my first journey in this when I was in university, doing engineering, playing water polo at a national level, trying to balance the social life of university, and I became a big brother with Big Brothers of Toronto, and one of the great rewarding experiences, and that experience taught me a lot. For the years that I did that, I had a wonderful young boy that I got to mentor, but it taught me personally a ton. And what I learned over the years was that giving back to your community is not just about giving back because you feel guilty or whatever, but you do it because it's actually both rewarding for you as much as it is for the environment or the organization that you involve yourself into. And I've learned so much. I've built so many friends, relationships, networks through it, such that it has been one of the great rewarding components of my life. And today, in where I am in my life, I work ultimately to give back. I mean that because I think about where I go and the ambition I have, and all of it is to have a bigger impact on the way that I can give, not just with my money, but with my time. And so it is a really important part of the rest of my career, my life, and the journey of my family. So.
Thank you. You're both so incredibly inspiring, truly. Now, and you might want to prepare for this, because I do know something about Sam. which is going to come as a surprise to everyone. It's pretty obvious that he's incredibly disciplined, hardworking, but also one of the things he talks about the virtues of is dreaming. So could you tell us what the significance of dreaming is, in your opinion?
Well, I'm a daydreamer, and I'm sure many of you are too. And I used to think that that was an impediment. That you would kind of catch me, and I would be in my own space. And frankly, I find it as a huge positive in my character, because it allows me to dream. And then, as I was saying to Ryan, who has shepherded me in here, I said he's a young, inspiring young kid who's thinking about a career in finance. I said, the thing that I love is this idea that dream big, but deserve, kind of create what you deserve, and not actually, be entitled to it, right? So dreaming big allows you to think big, but at the same time, you have to actually now put yourself in a position to deserve that opportunity. And that's something that I think Charlie Munger said, and I love that quote. And so daydreaming is a wonderful thing, and dreaming big is important. We need that more in Canada. We all need it as individuals. We have to inspire to be something great in anything we do in our lives.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, before we open the mics to questions from the floor, Gina, if I could ask you the same question. What is it that we don't know about you, but if we did, we'd be surprised?
Well, dream big is a great thing, by the way. I always dream big. But for me, it's small acts of kindness. That's my virtue. Small acts of kindness. Never forget that. I just tell you a little story. When I arrived, it was during hostage crisis, and my plane, when I left Iran in 1979, during revolution, it landed in New York. And I was supposed to go to Montreal. They pulled me out of the line, obviously. I'm from Iran. And they started asking questions, and I'm getting worried, looking at my watch. I'm going to miss my plane. And they were just being rude and mean, and I just put up with it. And then he says, now you can go. And I didn't know which terminal I had to go, because they pulled me out. I'm out. It's the first time I'm out of Iran. It's the first time I took a plane, for God's sake. So I was standing on the sidewalk and with my knapsack. And this guy passes by, looks at me and says, what's wrong with you? And I said, I have a plane to catch to Montreal. It's in another terminal, and I had no money cash in my pocket. I had just a traveler's check, for those of you that remember those days. So he took $5 American, gave it to me, and he was Iranian. And that $5 is over $20 today's money. He said, take a taxi and get to your plane. And I said, but how do I give this back to you? He said, don't worry, you will have a chance. You will give it back someday. This is a small act of kindness. I never forgot that moment. It meant a lot to me. And I was able to grab a taxi, catch my plane, and get to Montreal.
What an incredibly beautiful anecdote. Thank you for that. Now, we have mics on either side, and both Gina and Sam have agreed to take questions from the floor. Yes, sir. Did you want to get behind them? Okay, there we go.
I think AI is going to, so the question was, how does AI impact the financial sector, given the exponential growth of it? I think the AI is going to impact every sector, frankly, and differently, but I'd say that within financial services, it will continue to drive kind of, efficiencies within the operational elements of it. The simple way to think about financial services is that it's actually it's an agency business, and it's basically the entire business lives between those who have money and those who need money. And the wider that is, the bigger the industry, the tighter it is, the smaller the industry. And for the last sort of 15 years post-financial crisis, that has been shrinking. Prior to the financial crisis, that had been widening. And I think AI is going to be one of the catalysts to continue to shrink the agency and the opportunity for that. And so that's going to be important. I think that we've also seen a trend towards fewer opportunities or jobs in the financial services sector, because banks are getting smaller and thinner and all the rest of it because they have to become more efficient. And so AI is going to be a big driver of that. I think the flip side of that then is the consumer component. Just like every industry, everyone's figuring out and inspiring, seeing all these unique new ways of interacting with organizations or with their customers through AI-driven kind of bots and structures. I think it's going to be really fascinating. When I started Simple with my partner Mike Catron, we used to talk a lot about this idea of that personal finance, that you could get to a point where a plan, a light plan could be done for somebody with about 80% automated, 20% human. He and I believe today, and we debate, I believe it can go to 90%. He thinks you can get to 100%. And the reason is because I continue to believe that financial services is a business of trust, and that we'll never get past the idea that we want to know that Gina is servicing me, or John or whoever is servicing me. He, on the other hand, believes that people will get comfortable at some point not having an individual there. And that will be a fascinating thing to discuss and debate over the next couple of years. But I'm fascinated by it, as we all are, I'm sure. And I think every industry is going to, if company today is not paying attention and innovating within financial services, within AI and experimenting within the organization, both on how they operationalize the business, but also how they think about the customer experience, I think that they are going to fall behind.
Thank you. One more question before I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up. Yes, please.
My question is to Sam. As you said, you always look forward to 5-10 years from now. So if I may ask what you're focusing on at this point of time that you see is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've been continuously focusing on where the future of delivery of service is going to come from. I've been heavily involved in the last 7 years in the blockchain and crypto, and that's been an important thing. Again, a small component of where I saw things going, and I continue to believe that's going to be really important. Again, I really do believe that through technologies like AI, we are going to recreate a large part of the way that the many industries operationalize themselves today and also serve their customers. And so what we are doing today, or any of us are doing today, linearly, in many ways is going to actually have to shift to a very dynamic change. So a company today will 10, 20 years ago, you could keep doing the same thing and just do it bigger and bigger and bigger. Today, you have to be thinking about the future being very different than the way you operate today. And I tell my team that in 3 years, 5 years, how you're making money or building revenues is going to look very different than the way you're making money today. And that's how you have to be innovating today within the organization. And it's hard because many people they're all thinking about, okay, what do I do today? Just keep repeating it at scale. And I say you have to actually be creating the new ways of doing things tomorrow, today. No, it's a component of it, but that was something I had been focused on 5-7 years ago, and it's now starting to become much more prevalent. AI is starting to become much more prevalent, so you have to be ahead of the curve on those things.
I'm afraid our time is up, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But allow me to thank both of you for having given generously of your time. It was so incredibly absorbing. And let me say that both of you obviously aspire to excellence in everything you do. But let me say that as you aspire to great things, you certainly inspire us all.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be among great people.
Oops. Thank you for inspirational presentations. Now is a really good time after sitting here for a long time to have a break. We regather exactly at 6:30 for the next panel, for the next performance. Enjoy.
دست محبوب ندانم چون کنم ز دست محبوب ندانم چون کنم بس هجر رویش دل یارم چو شمع محفل است، دیدن رویش مشکل است. سرو مرا پا در گل است، بر خط و خالش مایل است، بر خط و خالش مایل است. یار من دلدار من، کمتر تو جفا کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن. رفتم بر آن ماه رو، با او نشستم روبرو. رفتم بر آن ماه رو، با او نشستم روبرو. گفتم سخنها مو به مو، یار من دلدار من، کمتر تو جفا کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن. رفتم بر آن ماه رو، با او نشستم روبرو. رفتم بر آن ماه رو، با او نشستم روبرو. گفتم سخنها مو به مو، یار من دلدار من، کمتر تو جفا کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن. زد دست محبوب ندانم چون کنم، زد دست محبوب ندانم چون کنم. بس هجر رویش دیده جیهون کنم، بس هجر رویش دیده جیهون کنم. یارم چو شمع محفل است، دیدن رویش مشکل است. سرو مرا پا در گل است، بر خط و خالش مایل است، بر خط و خالش مایل است. یار من دلدار من، کمتر تو جفا کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن، یادی آخر تو زما کن. ای بت چین ای صنم لاله رخ و زهر جبین ای صنم تا به تو دادم دل و دین ای صنم بر همه کس کشته یقین ای صنم من ز تو دوری نتوان نه دیگر جانم از تو صبوری نتوان نه دیگر بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم هر که تو را دید ز خود دل بری رفته ز خود تا که رخت را ببری تیر غمت چون به دل من رسید همچو بگفتم که همه کس شنید من ز تو دوری نتوان نه دیگر جانم از تو صبوری نتوان نه دیگر بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم ای نفس قدس توئه یای من چون تویی امروز مسیحای من حالت جمعی تو پریشان کنی وای به حال دل شیدای من ز تو دوری نتوان نه دیگر جانم از تو صبوری نتوان نه دیگر بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم بیا حبیبم بیا طبیبم ای بت چین ای بت چین ای بت چین ای صنم هوروش و ماه و جبین ای صنم من از تو دوری نتوانم دگر و از تو صبوری نتوانم دگر عزیز دلم زلف به رخساره چو افشان کنی چو افشان کنی چو افشان کنی حالت جمی را پریشان کنی پریشان کنی پریشان کنی وایو به حال دل شیدای من وایو به حال دل شیدای من از تو دوری نتوانم دگر و از تو صبوری نتوانم دگر عزیز دلم سر کمر بسته بالای توست ای حبیبم مجمع دلهای پریشان جمع ای حبیب ای حبیبم مجمع دلهای پریشان جمع ای حبیب ای حبیبم چین سر زلف چلی پای توست ای عزیزم چین سر زلف چلی پای توست ای عزیزم لب خندان توست ای عزیز ای حبیبم قند مکرر لب خندان توست ای عزیزم قند مکرر لب خندان توست ای عزیزم قند مکرر لب خندان توست ای عزیزم
Thank you, Nagme, Padide, and Olduz for your exceptional performance. We are looking forward to the second part of your performance later this afternoon. Now, our final inspirational panel, Leaders of Distinction, featuring Melody Adhami, Susan Latham, Ali Malek, and Bahar Behzadi, who will be the discussant, will start. Could you please?
We started in the morning, now it's good evening. It's truly a pleasure sitting amongst you distinguished leaders, and to the audience, thank you so much for staying and listening to us. We promise that it's going to be an exciting conversation. So to start, I'm going to start with you, Meridian. So you've been called the Queen of Apps by Globe and Mail for your very innovative work with Plastic Mobile. Can you tell us about your inspiring stories behind your journey?
Sure. First, let's talk about the Queen of Apps story. A really lovely journalist wrote that story, and I walked into work that day, and my team had gone and gotten one of those Burger King crowns. So that's a very memorable crown moment for me. Where do I start? So I think the Plastic Mobile journey started, it was about 17 years ago. Mobile phones weren't what they are today. Mobile phones were, the flip phones. If you touched the internet browser, you thought you were going to be charged $1 billion. You didn't know what to do with them. In that moment in time, my husband and I, we started Plastic Mobile together. We believed that apps were going to change the world. We thought, Steve Jobs hadn't even gone onto the stage to announce the app world. We were building what we called black market applications. And then, maybe 6 months later, we were building apps for companies like RBC, Rogers. 2 in every phone that's currently on people's phones, or as of several years ago, was built by us in the background. We knew it was going to be transformative technology, and that's sort of what we worked towards. 15 years later, about 5 years ago, Plastic Mobile was acquired by one of the largest entertainment companies in the world, Vivendi. They own Universal Music. And then that was where that journey ended and then moved me on to the next part. I'm currently in health, and that was a big jump. But that's what entrepreneurs do, we jump.
You do. I wanted to actually, before moving to Ali and Susanjan, I wanted to ask you about your a very fast response on the COVID era. If you can share that story with us as well.
Yeah, so I call that chapter 2. Chapter 2 was COVID. So when I talked about the acquisition of Plastic Mobile, it happened in 2005, but we had a 5-year, what's called an earn-out period. We worked to maximize sort of the growth of the company and transition to the next leaders. The 5 years ended in 2020. And I decided I was going to take a sabbatical. Okay, so great, they've bought my company. I'm going to take a few years, maybe a few months off, at least the remainder of 2020. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and it was like April 15th. It was my last day, and I pick up the phone. I call my mom. I have tears in my eyes. Oh my God, I'm useless. I have no job. I have nothing to do. 15 days later, myself and 2 other entrepreneurs decided that we were going to use software and technology to serve the COVID-19 response. We ended up opening up a COVID center in Forest Hill that was doing COVID testing privately. Really quickly, we realized so many people needed that service. There were people traveling because their loved ones were dying abroad and they couldn't get tested because they didn't qualify for the government testing. There were people that had surgeries that couldn't actually do their cancer treatment because the government lineups were so long and they couldn't do their COVID testing. We really quickly realized that this was a much needed service. The government actually ended up shutting us down after 10 days. They told us we were not allowed to do testing. We worked really hard, spoke to a lot of lawyers, lobbied the government, and actually showed that the response we were doing was in support of the government and was actually helping people in need. We ended up opening up 2 days after being shut down, and then ended up opening up about 25 locations, serving about maybe 8,000 tests a day during the pandemic for people who needed it. So it was definitely not the sabbatical I expected to take, but it was definitely a really interesting, fast-paced journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Ali, you tell us about yourself and how your background supported your professional journey.
Yes, thank you, Bahar. It's very nice to be here among everybody here. I think it's helpful. We are all telling our stories, and we are supposed to be up here inspiring people. So I think it's listening to other people's stories thing up here. It's just telling you mine. I arrived in Canada in 1989 after having been spent in Germany at a German boarding school that yesterday we were discussing together how it builds our characters. I arrived in Canada, went to Elahé, went to University of Toronto the next year. Second week of school, I saw an ad for Iranian Cultural Student Association. I said, okay, let's go see what is happening at this association. So this place I went to, I ended up joining the board. Tina was part of it, K1 was part of it, Ali was part of it. So it's amazing to see that 35 years later, just by deciding to go to one event, how it brought us all together, and how that little organization has mushroomed to what it is now. Back then, we were struggling to bring 50 people together. We were doing, if there are any of these students here, we were doing Nowruz events at Hart House. We were doing Yalda events at Hangar, and it's just as if it was yesterday. Yeah, so it's nice to see, and really, I have to also, at this point, there is a star missing here. So Ali has been really inspirational bringing this together, and I don't know who missed that. I think the most important for me was, getting the Deputy Prime Minister up here and showing the government on what the Iranian capacity is. All the communities are competing to be recognized. So really, this was amazing for her to come and see who we are. So really, this is my background. So went to engineering and then started working, and really this background has set me up to be able to travel the world and not to be worried about anything.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Susanjan, you've been the VP of JP Morgan, one of the top corporations in the world. And from the corporation world, corporate world, you moved to academia. I wanted to know more about that. How did that happen? And also wanted to know how your experience, your corporate experience, really helped you in your teaching experience.
Thank you, Barbara, I don't know if this is on. Yeah. For the question. But before I answer that, I wanted to echo Ali and really thank our honorable MP for bringing us all together and for creating this opportunity for a dialogue, which I think we can all benefit from and take advantage of. So thank you for that. Back to your question, you sort of talked about the change in my career, but I think change has been constant in my life. If I were to tell you the sort of my life story is one of moving around, mobility, uncertainty, serendipity, everything that you can recall, and ultimately sort of adaptability into what has to be. So it's always been a part of my life. And if I look back, the shift from corporate to academia, from academia to corporate, has also been a constant. I actually started my career as a research assistant back in Iran in organization behavior, and then so went to U of T as the assistant dean working in executive education, then went back to JP Morgan, back to academia. So it's been constant, and the learning has been reinforced in both cases. After leaving JP Morgan, though, specifically when I went into academia as an educator, I took a lot of information from my days at JP Morgan, which really informed my teaching, because I was able to integrate the theories that went into my work as an educator with my practical experience. And as such, I think both my work with senior executives and CEOs in organization development and leadership, as well as the experience I had in investment banking at JP Morgan, working with analysts and associates, informed my teaching in terms of how to actually bring about change for my students. And really help them become the leaders that they had the potential to become. So it's been a constant shift in transitioning learning.
It's quite fascinating. I was actually thinking about just hearing your background, that how the hard skills that we are having and developing as we are growing, we can actually take it through our professional journey, but also how our soft skills are transferable through this change. And that's fascinating, and we should never really forget the importance of the soft skills that we have. Let me continue with you about your books and articles. You're an author, amazing books and articles. Tell us about those books that you have, the multicultural leaders, and also the boarding school girls and boys. I'm bringing the boarding school because I wanted to also engage Ali on that.
I can go back a long ways, but you'll be here till forever. So I'll try and sort of summarize that. The genesis of the first book, which is the study of multicultural leaders, that's leaders who were born outside of Canada, but they became Canadian and they became recognized in the public domain as exceptional leaders. And so that's what the book was about. But the genesis of that was a very personal, transformational experience that I had while I was working at JP Morgan after 9/11. And what happened there was, again, to make the long story short, was I realized that I started to actually see myself from the perspective of others, which I had never done. I had been educated. I'd been brought up in England in a boarding school. I had worked my life in professional settings, in organizations, etc. But I had also been trained by my experiences to be independent, to be resilient, to solve problems, and to take care of myself. And suddenly, I sort of, after 9/11, I found my worldview had changed. And I found myself in sort of a sense-making space that I was vulnerable, and I realized that people didn't see me the way I saw myself. They saw me as a woman. They saw me as a Middle Easterner. They saw me as a Muslim. They saw me, in so many different, as an Iranian. And for me, I was just me. So I had to come to terms with who I was and how other people saw me. And so the reaction to 9/11 was very diverse from different people. And I started to question my own sense of self and my own identity. I had been away from the Persian culture just by sheer living in England and then in Canada, etc. And I suddenly thought, okay, I don't belong in the world of JP Morgan anymore, because they asked questions that I didn't have an answer to. And for example, they assumed I was a Muslim. I'd never read the Quran, so I went back and started reading the Quran so I can actually answer them intelligently. Or they talked about Iraq and Afghanistan without making a distinction about Iran. And so when I started to sort of say, okay, then I don't belong here, then I must belong to the Persian community. And so I actually left JP Morgan and came back to Canada, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go to where I belong. So I started going to Iranian grocery stores, I started going to Iranian parties, and then I realized that I didn't quite belong there either. And because I didn't have the right point of reference with them. And so I lived in this sort of subliminal space that I couldn't know who I was. And that was when I went back to U of T to do my PhD and decided on studying the lives of these other leaders to find out how did they navigate this bicultural identity. And so that was the genesis of the first book. That was the shortest answer I could give to that question. But so that was basically looking at social identity and how it affects who we are as leaders. What I learned from them was that their childhood experiences had really impacted them. And they were in their 60s, 50s, and when I asked them what drove them, and we talked about ambition and in the previous panels, what surprised me was that they said everything they did, and these were people not from Iranian cultures, from a variety of different cultures, that what they did was really to meet the obligation and expectation of their parents. This is in their 50s and 60s, and they're still trying to make their parents happy. And I know, again, in the previous panels, both Sam and Andrew talked about the appreciation of their parents for bringing them to Canada, etc. So we come from this collectivist society, culture, that binds us to our families and our relationships with our aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers. And my husband is a Nova Scotian, and when I say I, he always thinks I'm talking about me. But I have had to explain to him that when I say I, it includes my children, my nephews, my uncle, my aunts, you know. And so I started, so that sort of triggered this idea of, okay, so what about the childhood experiences? How does that impact who we are as leaders? And so I went back with a colleague who, Roya Ferdows, who had also gone to boarding school. And then we wrote the book on the experience of Iranian women who grew up in boarding school, in British boarding school in the 60s and 70s. And then subsequent to that, the publisher and some of our readers said, okay, so why not now explore the lives of the Iranian men? Which was a much more challenging one since I didn't quite identify with them. But so we went back and wrote the childhood identity and masculinity, which is the story of Iranian men who grew up in British boarding schools, and that came up in 2023.
Ali, you had some experiences. Share with us, please.
Well, it's since yesterday when I've heard about these books, a lot of memories have been coming back. So my parents decided to send me off out of Iran when I was turning 14. So the choice was between Germany or Turkey. And I didn't hesitate to pick Germany right away. So I ended up in a German boarding school without knowing the culture, without speaking the language, in an environment that there were a lot of bullying going around, a lot of, it was during the Iran-Iraq war, so it was a little village, so they wouldn't understand anything cultural about Iran. But 6 months into it, and now I look back, this is what made me. When I look at my children, 13, 14-year-old, if I imagine I dropped them off in a foreign country without knowing the language, you would think, okay, what are they going to do? But over the years, I have been through, probably I end up at some point writing books about my travels, but I have been ending up in the middle of Libya when the airport shuts down and you don't know how to get out, or fighting breaks out and you're caught in the middle. You become resilient. You just have, now looking back, probably that was a start, but something has been there that you don't worry about it. And that is really the upbringing that affects you. And I have met many others in my age group that have gone to similar similarities. And it's interesting that we all have ended up succeeding in what areas we have been in. So it's really, I'll be reading your book, so I'll be...
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Interesting. Well, I have 3 children, and I always, my husband and I always talk about this concept of resilience and being first-generation immigrants who had to make the lives that we had, coming to a country, in our case, with our parents, like coming to a brand new country, starting from basically the ground up. How do we instill that in our children? How do we get that resiliency and that struggle? We talked about ambition and we talked about hard work, like in the previous panel. That ambition comes from something, and I would say my ambition comes from that, that desire to build something better than the previous generation. And we always ask, how do we inspire that in the next generation when they don't have to struggle or go through that?
It's very interesting. I'm struggling with that because we had to start off with pretty much not having many choices. So when I got accepted to U of T, it was a no-brainer. It's the U of T, you go to it. We are at a footing to give our children better opportunity, but I'm always struggling that, okay, making it easy for them, are we actually giving them service or we are disservice? And that's the balance that is really, we'll find out 15 years down the road when they sit up here and speak what they have managed to do with it. But I think they have a great opportunity because they are starting up at a very different level than we did in different stages. So I'm talking about our generation in the 1990s. Looking back at university, everybody had found a way to support themselves, to get some government funding, everybody was supporting themselves. Now, we are supporting...
On you.
Yeah. I think, Melody, one of the things that happens is we've gone through all of that, and we're sitting here. I think I'm right in saying that we are from 3 different generations. So forgive me, I go way back. But I think what happens in terms of our own children is that often we tend to talk about our successes and what we've been achieved, and we're sitting here talking, boasting, celebrating, if you like, in terms of what we've done. But I think what our children need to learn from us is our vulnerabilities, our hardships, and our failures, so that they can understand that the road is not a straight line up, that there are challenges, there are obstacles, and I think one of my learnings have always come from either my own children or my students, and one of the learnings from my own son was, Mom, let me fail, and because the sooner I fail, the sooner I learn, and I think we become, because of our own experiences, we become so protective of our own children, and that we may not allow them to experience some of the hardships that actually, as we're learning, back to what Tina was talking about, comes from those challenging, desperate moments that force us to look inward. And I think our children deserve that opportunity to do the same.
I wanted to also add that we should also think about our fellow Hambatans, the newcomers that they're coming to Canada. And they are going through those really hard and tough days, making tough decisions and really surviving, and really choosing the right steps to grow. So the news for them is that next generation is going to be better. It's going to really use the fruit of all your tough work that you're having today. I'm going to switch a little bit to you, Melody. I wanted to talk to you about the company culture. In this competitive market, really a company culture is a huge differentiator. What are the factors that you always keep in mind so you can keep your employees happy, but also you can have your company growing rapidly?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, and I think it would be the key number one, thing that keeps a CEO up at night is how do we instill a culture that keeps your team motivated, that keeps them, wanting to work where they do, makes them believe and realize that they're part of a bigger purpose and a bigger role, and takes you away from a transactional relationship. So transactional relationship is you work for me, I pay you money, we make a transaction. A non-transactional relationship is I come to work every single day because I believe that I'm going to make a difference and I have a purpose and I'm doing something that's bigger than myself, that's either going to leave a legacy or that's going, I'm going to go home being proud of myself every day. I would say that that's the thing I think about every single day as a leader, because that's, one, I don't want to go to work every day thinking that I come here, I pay people, and they leave. I want to go to work and I want to feel that myself and everybody that works with me is doing something that's contributing to the greater good somehow. Now, greater good it's not always philanthropy. You're not always like, Ali Associé, I think you made a mistake. I'm probably the only person who's not a doctor or an engineer in the whole day. So I don't know how I got invited. It was an accident, guys. But you don't have to do heart surgery to give back and have a greater good. You could, I think somebody told me this one story of this lady who started a cleaning company, and every single day she would go to work and she would clean all of these offices, and eventually she went from herself and her husband into a 1,000-person company. And every day, she went into work saying the purpose was to make all these other organizations thrive and succeed. So you don't, it's in the work that you do, you have to have that belief that you are serving that purpose. So honestly, the first company we had, we built applications, which to some people would be okay, they built software, they built apps, but I completely believed I was changing the world. I thought I'm building a banking application, which means that people could bank faster and people could don't have to go into the bank that day, and it would reduce fraud and it would do this and it would do that. I believed that I was changing the world. And so, 50 other people and 250 other people came along and believed that they were changing the world. And so I think that's what a company culture and a purpose does, is when you truly affectionately believe in what you're doing. And sometimes you build apps, and then today I'm building a fertility business, and I truly, honestly believe that we are going to increase success rates and reach 80%. And that's what I'm going to go towards. I'm going to believe in it until it becomes true.
Fascinating. Awesome. Ali, you're working at global scale, so you're doing projects abroad. How do you come across the cultural shifts and cultural changes and differences? How do you embed it into your company's culture?
So what I did when I took over as CEO, well, just to tell you, I started my job at this company I'm at straight out of university, so I've been doing this for 30 years now. So I basically did from drafting to becoming the CEO of the company. So when I took over as CEO, one of the first steps was tap into my network to see, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to do? So the first thing we did is we brought in a plan to define, an entrepreneurial company that started with 4 people had grown to 50 people. So we were trying to say, how do we bring the structure? One of the first steps we did, let's define our core values. Who are we? And it took a bit of time for us to define it. And then we said, okay, let's put a target that where do we want the company to be in 10 years? And of course, the first step you do, okay, I want my company to make $1 billion. So we put a target of a long-term dollars. A few years into it, we said, okay, that's not gonna, if an employee is, okay, you're gonna make $1 billion, what is it in it for me? So it really wasn't inspirational. So we decided, okay, where is our industry going? So our company is involved in the oil and gas business. On the same time, I was driving my son to school. He asked me, so what do you do? I explained to him. I said, this is a dead business. And you are not, with all the environmental things happening, you're not going to survive. So having all this in the background, so okay, let's change the shift of the plan, the 10-year target of the company, and we shifted towards, okay, we want to become a company that offers sustainable solution for production of energy. And that really was inspirational. So everybody was excited that, Ms. Cody talked about how to, talk about gender equity in the company. Now we are trying to go, how do we train engineers to know about clean tech? How do they, because if they learn, they can implement it, but they don't think of it. So that really brings together how you create a company culture and you attract people who are interested on these things. The interesting shift that happened for us as during COVID, pretty much everybody we hired during 2020 to 2023 did not stay at our company. The rest of the company has been with us for 10 years plus. So we started realizing there is a shift happening. So what happened during COVID? Or what didn't we manage to do? Maybe we were not coming to the office, so we were not managing to create that family environment that we were trying to do. So it's really work in progress, and every company is different. And having staff in different parts of the world is different. But being aware of that culture and the shift that happens and attracting people that fits your culture is very important. Companies can be very different. Necessarily, our culture would not fit the other company's culture, but being aware of it, that's the most important. And it's challenging. It's not an easy task.
Absolutely. Susan John, you're educating and raising leaders. I wanted to ask you, what are your recommendations or some low-hanging fruits for the leaders that they are running companies so they can be more successful, especially in multicultural firms and teams?
If I can just link it to organizational culture, perhaps, because is very, whether it's personal culture heritage culture or organizational culture. It's a deeply embedded set of values, and it's really hard to change at the organizational level. And I think where it emanates from is from the leader and the leadership team. And if leaders are able to understand their own values, their own cultural biases, if they can overcome their childhood acculturations, and if they can rise above their own hardships, if they can embrace differences, while recognizing that we are all similar, we all want the same thing, but recognizing the unique individual differences, I think that's where the whole organizational culture trickles down. And that's why I think the work that I've done from a practical perspective, but also as an educator, is really trying to get leaders or emerging leaders, who I call my young students, because I think everybody has the potential to be a leader, is to really start with themselves and start to understand their own values about norms and behaviors that they can accept and understand, that actually goes beyond the traditional Western values or organizational values that we've all been trained in, but be able to bring into the process, from within, what they're trying to do. So I think from a leadership perspective, it's really important for leaders to have that understanding of who they are before they can start to expand or change the organizational culture. Organizations are going through tremendously challenging and difficult times right now. And from a human resource perspective, I was lucky because I said, thank goodness I wasn't working during COVID, because human resource executives went crazy trying to manage this flow of expectations from employees and dealing with COVID and others. And I think they're still trying to figure it out, just as individuals, which is where sort of I'm always focused on. We look at our own identity. I think organizations are trying to identify who they are, who they want to be, and they can look externally and look at the trends and sustainability and other factors to change culture, or they can look within and understand who the employees are, what the aspirations of the employees are, and try to bring about a transformational leadership that allows them to shift the culture to where they want to take it and where the employees can buy into it. And that's a really big challenge for people, CEOs like Ali and Melody, in terms of making it actually happen. So it's a tough time to be there.
I find it very interesting because I think during COVID, we all changed. So one thing I have been finding out that we have all become more, we want to take care of ourselves more, including ourselves and our staff. So like before COVID, if I would get a call saying, we want you in our office in middle of Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't even hesitate. By 8 p.m., I would be in the plane. I would be in their office next day at 2 p.m. Today, if I get a call, I would try to figure out, maybe can't we do it on a Zoom? Can we just have a call? Deep inside, I know just being there, that would be the right thing to do. And I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone to do that. But it's difficult to do that for the rest of the team. Like right now, you say, okay, just please come 3 days to the office. They show up maybe 2 days. And you know that if they come to the office, you can create a culture, but how can you create a company culture by over the phone or through camera? And it's the shift that people want there. I mean, it's something is happening, so we have to see how do we create a company around it.
Leadership as a concept is very elusive in itself, but I think ultimately leadership is about human development. It's about energizing, inspiring, mobilizing people to maximize their potential. And we can't do that unless you understand where they're coming from, unless you understand their differences, unless you understand their expectations. So it's really hard to do what you want to do without really, and that's where the challenge is, because in the old days, in my generation, everybody was the same. We treated everybody the same. Diversity wasn't an issue. Cross-cultural issues wasn't an issue. And most of us weren't even aware of our own prejudices. And we just treated everybody the same, and we took pride in the fact that we're all the same. But we're not. And we want the same things. We wear the same jeans and the same shoes and the same brands or whatever. But every one of us is uniquely different. And just because we're all Iranian doesn't mean we're all the same either, because each one of us has our own unique cultural values. And that's what makes it really challenging to shift organization culture. It's time-consuming, and it's full of obstacles and barriers. And so I wish you luck.
It's a great conversation. The only thing is that I see a lot of hand, moving that, okay, your time is up. Okay, yes. Thank you so much for the great conversations. Sorry, audience, that we are not having time for any questions from your side. But back to you, and thank you.
My gratitude to our leaders of distinction, Melody, Susan, Ali, and Bahar, for this really inspiring conversation. And thank you for sharing the most intimate, personal kind of experience that you have had with us. And I hope it helps all of our participants here, and it has also enabled me, and you have taught me a great deal of lessons today and through your talk. We have made a little bit of change, and instead of having the closing remarks at the end, because of the time limitation that we have, we are doing the thanks in the beginning, and then we have the musical performance that will end today. Well, first of all, let me thank you all for supporting us by being here, joining us in celebrating Nowruz 2024. And my special gratitude to our inspirational speakers and outstanding performers who have done really amazing things in a short period of time preparing. And this has been an inspiring collaboration with MP Ali Ehsasi and his amazing team that includes Sam Azad, Sam Leduc, James Hogg, and Mahdise Kamyab. Thank you very much for your collaboration and your help. And particularly to our own leader of distinction, Ali Ehsasi, for coming up with unusual ideas for our Nowruz event. And Ali's note to me was, we are spending too much time feeling sorry for ourselves. Let us create a moment that we'll be proud of ourselves, proud of our colleagues, proud of Iranians who have done so much great things and become, and as you have seen, a source of inspiration. So thank you, Ali. Thank you, Celeste, for incredible support. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank our spectacular graphic designer. All of the graphic design and the work that you have seen is produced by Mahak Ruhinab, one of our graduate students at the University of Toronto. She's really brilliant, and she has done a lot of really great and kind of work that has staying power. This gathering of ours and a lot of other events that we do at the University of Toronto, and we have 2 or 3 seminars weekly, would not have been possible without the support, incredible, professional, totally committed. Really, that commitment is really important, is Bilal Hashmi, Shabnam Gulkhandan, Sofia Farroukhi, Abul Fazl Moshiri. These are the team that I work with very closely, and they have done a spectacular job. Please join me to thank them. And our team of student volunteers from University of Toronto. The list is too long to thank everyone. I'm really grateful for for your support, for being here from 8 o'clock, 8:30, and this event would not have been successful without your support, without your dedication and presence. Now, our spectacular group, please, colleagues.
Hey dad, hey bidar, kasti yar niyad, kas la darda kas agadar niyad. Hey dad, hey bidar, lam gaur ashara, na dangi dosti nayar diyara. Hey dad, hey bidar, کنار
Thank you very much. We are so happy to performing here, and thank you for your presence. So this is our last song. Yeah, it's a bit vibrant, so you can even dance if you want.
Hamıdan göçek güle batın. Hey hey dağlarda çiçek güle batın. Doldur ver içek güle batın. Hamıdan göçek güle batın. Hey. Azizim od yandırmaz, yar seni od yandırmaz. Azizim od yandırmaz, yar seni od yandırmaz. Hele ki sen yandırdın ay gülüm, hiç beni od yandırmaz. Hele ki sen yandırdın ay gülüm, hiç beni od yandırmaz. Dağlarda çiçek güle batım, doldur ver içek güle batım. Hamıdan göçek güle batım. Hey hey dağlarda çiçek güle batım, doldur ver içek güle batım. Hamıdan göçek güle batım. Hey. Azizim gözlerine sürme çek gözlerine. Azizim gözlerine sürme çek gözlerine. Üzüm yüzüne kurban ay gülüm gözlerin gözlerine. Özüm yüzüne kurban ay gülüm gözlerin gözlerine. Dağlarda çiçek güle batın, doldur ver içek güle batın. Hamıdan göçek güle batın. Hey hey dağlarda çiçek güle batın, doldur ver içek güle batın. Hamıdan göçek güle batın. Hey dağlarda çiçek güle batın, doldur ver içek güle batın. Hamıdan göçek güle batın. Hey hey dağlarda çiçek güle batın, doldur ver içek güle batın. Hamıdan göçek güle batın.